All right. Terry, can you hear us online now?
Yes, thank you.
There we go. Okay, so we'll go ahead and call to order the our regular monthly meeting of the Town Council of the Town of Little Falls for August 12th, 2021. Start with a moment of silence. Amen. I believe we would like to amend our agenda for tonight to allow Tammy to go ahead and give her presentation before we start the public hearing. And that way she can get back up to Raven County. So, can we get a motion to make that amendment? Joey makes that motion. Tom seconds. All in favor? Unanimous. All right. Then let's go ahead and approve the agenda. Need a motion to approve the agenda with that amendment. Joey makes a motion, Larry seconds. All in favor? Unanimous. All right, we'll go ahead and hand the floor over to Miss Tammy.
All righty, thank you. I'm glad to be here with y'all tonight. We have a lot of new stuff going on in elections. Trying to catch y'all up to speed. We had 98 pages of new laws that I'm trying to get a handle on. You can imagine what that's like. And I have some extra for anybody who would like those. I'll put those right there. One of the biggest changes that we're going to see, but it's not really that is going to affect you that much. Of course, it's actual cost of an election. So if you'll look over there on the estimated cost, you'll see that with that new law passed, that it's actually 17 days of early voting now. They added another Saturday, and then they included cities in the Saturday. So that's 3 weeks of early voting plus 2 days of Saturday voting. And then, of course, the transportation of the equipment up to your location on the day of the election. Used to, I could put that in a car and bring it up. Now that's so large, that's no longer something that I can do. We have to have somebody to move it. So I don't know if the city has a box car that box trailer, but if not, Simply Move is the contractors that county contractors with, and that would be a $270 increase there. We will not know how many, what your actual cost is going to be because we split it. So it's actual cost. So with cities, qualifying is August the 16th through the 20th. After that date, I don't know how many cities will be holding elections. Because of early voting, you're using the same election staff for everybody who comes through and early votes. So you split that with how many ever cities are participating. The date of election cost is your own cost. And so that you pay that differently. Same thing with legal advertisement, stuff like that. Y'all are a little bit different because you have to advertise in the Habersham side and the Clayton Tribune. So your cost is a little bit more there because of that. But other than those, that's what the increase is going to be. I did talk to the state. Mike asked me to talk about, going all paper ballot for y'all and not using the machines at all. They said you could do that. Then you'd still have to pay the cost of early voting, obviously. But on the day of the election, you'd have to pay one team of people that would be here during the day, and then another group of people that would have to come in and do it the old way where you do the tally. You know what I'm talking about, where they have 3 people and one person calls out and you have to tally and you have to do all that. And then your reports would be different because you wouldn't have You just have that on paper. You wouldn't actually have that where you'd put it in with every, and have you print out. So that would be the difference on that. I don't know which way that y'all want to go, if it's something you want to talk about after you see whether or not you have an election. But then you'd have to make a decision pretty quick after qualifying so that I know how to set your elections up. So do y'all have any questions about any of that or things that you need to ask me or clarify about what's going to happen? So it could or could not. You are going to have some cost increase. I can tell you that my estimate for y'all without the changes was if you had it all by yourself and no other city was having an election, it was 4,445. If that was to happen again, it's 4,751. So you can see it's not a whole lot of change there. Also, the county, which I know y'all are talking with part of that, they may put that T-SPLOS on the ballot. If that happens, then the county pays a portion of all these elections too, because you will be voting on both things. You'll be voting on your city stuff and your county, and except for the Habersham side, and then they would have a ballot just for the city stuff, not the county. So for this election, it could be split a variety of ways depending on if that T-SPLOS happens or not. Any questions about any of that? Short and sweet. For y'all that are candidates, the ethics committee has changed all of their stuff too. So it's a new web portal and new things for that. So if you're qualifying for this time, make sure that you give yourself enough time and bring your calendar with you, because we'll have to pick a date for you to come back to do your ethics data. Who's up this time? Larry, both of y'all are this. So when you come next week, bring a calendar with you, whatever day you come to qualify, because you'll need to pick a time to come back and see me to sign up for that new ethics stuff. And for y'all oldies, y'all are gonna have fun when it's your time to come and do your your update. But other than that, anything, I try to make it short and sweet, but I want to give you enough information, whatever you need to know to make a decision about how you want your election run on the day of.
Tammy, I just had one question. Do we have the option of, for example, bringing the machines down here, or letting you run the thing out of your office up there?
Not for this
Not for
election.
this one, okay.
You have to, because you have to go through advertisement and you have to have a hearing about that in your city and all of that kind of stuff before you move it. So right now, because Tiger's in the process of moving it, they only hold an election every 4 years. So they're a little bit different. Most cities have it every other year. But everything, but all the other cities will be at my place, except for y'all for this year, for this time. But so it'll have to take place here.
For this
time.
particular
And then
time.
you'd have to make decisions, and your legal counsel would have to do what he has to do to change that if you want to move to the office.
It has to be done quite a bit in
In
advance.
advance, yeah.
Several
I was
months.
thinking we were enough in advance this time, because I think we ran into the same thing the last time. We
Yeah.
ran into the same thing, and it just seemed to make so much more sense and easy for you, or easier, more convenient to run it out of your office and not have to move machines and have somebody stand watch on them and all that.
And in talking with the state, so what we would do, where before we would come and set it up the night before, we'd have to make a plan to get in like really early on election morning to deliver the equipment. And then they would stay until all that's wrapped up, and they would take it right back to me. So, and then another option is, if you decided not to move down there, is to buy one of those things to have here for y'all. So that I only had to transport stuff that could be in the car, not the big thing that has to be in a trailer. But those are things to think about. But for this one, your decision would be,
For this one, we've got to have it here in this room.
and then do you want to do it tally? Because you can do it paper. So I'd have ballots here and people would sit down and, mark them with the pen. You can run those, that the machine will read those, and I wouldn't have to bring BMDs. That would scan it and read them, but you'd still have to transport that up here. And that's your $270 cost, no matter what they bring. That's just the contract price that they do. And then, or you could do all paper ballot where you didn't use any machinery at all, but then you'd have to have the people that are working the day, and then another shift would have to come that night because those people have already been here 13 hours. And so another group would have to come in then and open that box and sit there and start that tallying process. And I know some of y'all been through that. It's kind of a little lengthy
Yeah.
thing.
Was there a price, did you do a price estimate for the paper ballot?
You can't really, because it depends on how many votes on the day of. So you're gonna have your early voting, and your paper ballots will be taking place at the office. So it depends on how many, you're talking 30 people show up, 40 people, 50 people, depends on how long they stay. And so that would be an hourly pay for those 3 people, and probably run you about $15 for an hour for those people to come and do, and it depends on how long they stay. And then to add it all together, then they would have to finish up transport that back to me for me to give you a total of the whole thing. So that would take, so you'd have to, all the other cities, so you'd have to realize everybody else is gonna have their numbers except for y'all. You'd have to wait for that process to get through. As long as everybody knew that in your town, so that they're not calling the office and say, why is Tallulah Falls numbers not in? Well, they're still up there, hand counting ballots. So you just have to make sure everybody understood that.
And one other option would be, we can, if Linda went back and got certified as an election superintendent, we can bring everything all back in-house. But it's not necessarily gonna save us any money, because we still have to do the early voting by the same laws that they're having to go by. We've got to still pay people, and we're not splitting the cost at that point. It'd be all on us.
Yeah.
So,
And it'd be 3 weeks and 2 Saturdays. So you'd have to budget whoever, I don't know if you have Saturday employees, and it has to be at least 3 people.
Now, how soon do you need us to make a decision on these?
After the qualifying period, until you see for sure whether you're gonna have an election or not. And so, but I don't know how y'all, I know you won't have another meeting. That's why I came to this meeting, so that you could talk about it and kind of decide where you want to go. So that after qualifying, you'll be prepared to tell me what direction I need to go in.
I think we budgeted, did we budget 5,000 for elections this year? I think we budgeted for more, so we knew there'd be an increase based on the new machinery and having to transport it.
Yeah, we actually have made that decision, let Tammy handle it, since she's in that business, so to speak, and she's set up to do it and try to simplify it as much as possible. So I wasn't aware that we were gonna have to come back here one more time.
And so that would be the 4751 is just if you were doing it on your own.
Right.
So, so it would be split. So it's going to be less than
Right. But we had already budgeted for it. I think anticipating that we were gonna continue doing what we've been doing. The concern was, on my side, was if it was gonna be double, then we might want to look at other options. But
So I've kept everything as close to, so it did not impact the cities hugely. The county's taken a lot of the hit. So hopefully it's not, but I can't do anything about the transporting up and down the road. And then, and just for y'all's information, if you haven't heard, they're relocating me. So as of September the 8th, 7th, 8th, I'm moving that week. We will be at where the health department will be the bottom floor, used to be the old hospital. We'll be taking over that. And so everything, it will become a true vote center where everything, no matter what, will be at that one spot. Day of early voting.
That'll happen this year.
Mhm.
Okay.
So that's where they'll come, that's where your citizenship will come in early vote. So y'all may want to get the word out about that. And that's where everything will take place on the day of. Everything will be there.
And you'll make your move in September. You said?
Mhm. Early vote will start October the 11th if you have an election. And that'll run the whole rest of the month of October. And those first 2 Saturdays are your Saturdays by law that we have to be open, and they extended that hours. It has to be from 9 to 5. So then I'll let y'all discuss, and then if you'll just get back with how you wanna do, if you've got it budgeted, it would be easier just to let them bring the machines and run it, and then have the little card and put it in and go. But it's up to y'all what you wanna do there.
That's all I have.
Anybody else? Okay, thank y'all.
All right.
Appreciate y'all moving it so I can be first.
Thank you, Miss Tammy.
All right.
All right.
All right, I guess we'll go ahead and move into the public hearings section, and I'm gonna I think Warren's gonna go ahead and mediate those for us.
Sure, okay. So I guess with the public hearings, then the general procedures, or we'll open each public hearing, process is gonna be the same for all of them. But to summarize that, Linda will give a brief explanation, or I can do it if she wants, of kind of what the ordinances are. From there, there'll be a recommendation, if there is one, from planning and zoning. When we open the actual public hearing, it'll be 10 minutes, at least 10 minutes aside. It'll start with people who support the amendment, and then it'll move to people who oppose the amendment. After that, we'll close the public hearing. Council will get a chance to discuss. And the way we've got it set up is we'll actually do the voting in the new business part of it for the ones that we're going to vote on. That will only include the two that say ordinances. The tree protection ordinance is not on the agenda to be voted on tonight. But since we already have it advertised, it makes sense to go ahead and get public input for the forthcoming recommendation by planning and zoning. So with that, I guess we'll open the public hearing, or we'll start with the tree protection ordinance, which at least as I understand it, what P and Z looked at last night is in a packet. We still don't have a recommendation.
We don't have their modifications yet.
All right, so the way I understand it is planning and zoning adopted something subject to some changes based on what's in the packet. We don't have that recommendation yet, but I think it's good to go ahead and get input from anybody here who is wanting to speak in favor of the tree ordinance, and then we'll move to those who are opposed, and then we can discuss about where to go from there. So is anybody here in favor of the tree ordinance?
Yes, I'm in favor of it. I haven't had a chance to look over the first one that came up at that first hearing with P and Z. I wasn't at the meeting last night, so I don't feel like that I'm really up to speed with what's going on. Just to put my general opinion out there. I think the simpler we make it, the better. I don't want to see us get bogged down and, you can do this, you can't do that, blah, blah, blah. But just, just keep it simplified with some general things. My suggestion would be, I would love to see no clear cutting of any lots. No cutting in, if there's already trees, vegetation in that 15-foot buffer from the property lines, no cutting in there. That allows that natural buffer between properties. Have the tree be a certain diameter that it has to be in order to get a permit. I mean, it would be a little ridiculous that, something that big you have to come get a permit for. I like the idea that it has to be cleaned up in X amount of time. I just think that that's like a courtesy thing for your neighbors. I'd like to see that. I can't think of anything else. I guess you got to look at how you can enforce this, make sure it gets enforced once it's in place. And like, what's the ramifications if someone doesn't come get a permit? I heard that maybe that there was something in it that said if you cut down a tree without a permit, you have to plant 2 more. I don't know, is that really feasible? I mean, I don't know. Anyway, I just had a little bit of concern about that. Don't even know if that's still on the table or not. But quickly, in a nutshell, without knowing everything, that's what I want to say. But thank y'all for working on this. As I said at the P and Z hearing, Don Budrick, my former husband, when he was on the city council back in 06, 07, 08 maybe even, he tried to get a tree ordinance pushed through. This is nothing new. This is something that's been talked about before. I appreciate y'all taking it back up now and all the time and effort that's gone into this. He didn't gain the support from it back then, but I appreciate the fact that there is support for it now. So thank y'all.
We want to check. Sue?
Yeah. Anyone on Zoom that wants to speak in favor? We've only got 3 people, Terry, Robin, and Kathy. Kathy's got a thumbs up. So she's speaking in favor of it right now, I guess. And I can't see Robin and Terry, so.
All right, going once, going twice, anybody else? All right, so we'll close the portion of it for those in support. Is there anybody in opposition who wants to say anything?
I do want to make a few comments.
Sure,
At, the last council meeting, we did submit our objection in writing, so you guys have that along with the members of P and Z. And at last night's P and Z meeting, we discussed a little bit further the Gilmore County Mountain Preservation Ordinance. And we thoroughly looked through that one, and we felt like that one might be a little bit more reasonable. We thought there was some misinterpretation from some of the P and Z members last night on the Gilmore County, because the way it reads is anything 2,200 feet altitude and above, that's where the restrictions are. Anything 2,200 feet and below, there is no restrictions on cutting trees. And we thought, or it was our belief, that some of the members of last night's board was thinking that it was more restrictive to where 2,200 feet and up, you were not allowed to cut anything. So that's not the way it reads. It's 2,200 feet and below, there's no restrictions, but 2,200 feet and above, that's where the restrictions start. So that's what we wanted to clarify. And we have submitted a copy of that for their review. We were just concerned that they might possibly have misconstrued that and then want to make it to where you could not cut anything 2,200 feet and above, which would be a hardship on anyone with that. So,
Yeah.
hope that makes sense.
I think so. Yeah, we got it in front of us here, so.
Anything we want to open it from?
Is there any opposition on the Zoom meeting? Anyone speaking, wanting to oppose the tree ordinance? So only 3, no movement.
Okay, anybody else want to say anything on the tree ordinance? All right, well, with that, we'll close the public hearing on the tree ordinance. I had mentioned in the procedures, council, that y'all can discuss these now, or we can do it at the new business part of it. The tree ordinance obviously is not something that's going to be up for decision. So it may be preferable, just for the sake of efficiency, go ahead and discuss how or what you want to do moving forward, if at all, with that now. So with that, I'll open it up to you all.
My thought on the tree ordinance right now is what we have without the changes yet. We really won't be able to make a decision, but I feel like we need to work on it some more. I think we should plan on doing a workshop among ourselves. I've heard some concerns from some of you as council members. I've heard some concerns that maybe this is a bit too much, or maybe we need to simplify it a little bit more. And like Mary Beth was saying, so I think it might be best for us on something like this to plan on doing a workshop with this, maybe late September, something like that. But what are y'all's thoughts on that?
I agree with that. I agree. I think the tree ordinance, the way it's written right now, is way too much. It's too much for the city to handle. It's too much on everyone.
Right.
Yeah. And it's too big of a change. I think a smaller, if you're gonna go that direction, would be much more effective, but this is too much.
I've looked through it and I've kind of come up with a rough draft. I think we can do it where we can address the issue about just someone coming in and obliterating every tree on their property without being so restricted that they can't cut a tree that
Yeah.
maybe they don't, I don't like.
Linda
pine
doesn't
trees.
wanna have to receive a permit for every
Right.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
I
think
think
we can
just
come
don't have
with-
the staff to handle that. It's just too much, the way it's written right now.
Right, I think we can find a balance, and strike a balance that would be much simpler.
I
we
think,
can do.
you've also got to clarify when you say, I mean, if somebody's got, 5 acres or whatever, and they're, going into clear cut as opposed to, a lot or something like that, that's,
And who dictates a dangerous tree?
yeah.
To me, it could be
Exactly.
dangerous. To you, you might think it's a lovely tree.
And,
I mean, just things like that. It's just they're getting us a little too deep for what,
Yeah.
I don't know who would be responsible, those
enforce.
are just things I understand. It's just a draft.
Yeah.
I get it. But yeah, we would need, if it's in our hands now and it doesn't go back to plan and zoning, then we would definitely need a workshop.
So you've got options. I mean, technically, the recommendation is not in our hands yet. We
Okay.
don't have the final
But I would
version.
recommend sending it back to planning and zoning. I mean, that's my opinion.
Yeah, so your options are, we can get the recommendation from them and then y'all can work on it.
Yeah.
You can send it back to planning and zoning with
Yeah.
some direction.
And we can get more involved with planning and zoning, kind of help them out on it. I didn't know the tree ordinance was really coming at us this quick, but
And, the way I would propose doing it is, don't turn it over to me or spend money on doing that till y'all get something.
no, I understand. Yeah.
I think I can come up with based on what I was reading through, I can come up with a rough draft. We can get together, look at that, get some ideas to then send back to planning and zoning and say, guys, take this and let's rework that just a little bit. I think that would help. Or if you want to come in and be in part of the meetings, that might help too.
Yeah. exactly.
So,
Does anybody know if it was planning and zoning, were they planning to make some changes or recommendations, but just didn't get it done last night? Was that it? Is that, I wasn't at the meeting, so I don't know.
I think they made changes, they just have not gotten those to us. I listened to the portion of the meeting that was on YouTube this morning, and I could hear some of the changes, some of the meeting didn't make the,
some, yeah,
recording. So I don't know everything that was changed, but
Yeah.
I know they made some changes, so we haven't gotten that from them yet.
Well, I mean, I'd certainly like to have those to consider, and discuss those, whatever changes they plan to make. I think before we jump in there and try to make a decision, to know what their final thought is, or recommendation or suggestion, because that's what they're there for after all.
I think you can go from whatever they recommend and then workshop your ideas and what you'd like to see, and then whether you make it at this level or remand back to P and Z to, consider the input and make additional changes, however you want to do it on that.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I wasn't at the meeting, didn't know what
Yeah.
they had on their mind.
If I understand correctly, if y'all get together and y'all decide that some substantial changes need to be made, it will have to go back through the public hearing process again. So we would continue to get public input. Even if we don't have public hearings, we want to continue to get public input. See if we can hammer this thing out and make it something we can all live with.
And one thing I could think of is that, I would think that when it comes time that we'd want to leave room for a variance, if somebody wanted to come in and apply for a variance, because I can assure you, every property situation is different. They're not all one and the same, every situation. In property in our area is far different, so I would think that we would need some room, flexibility for somebody
Yeah, the way they've got it written now, it has an appeal process, but
to have,
All
to be able
ordinances
to
would.
apply for a variance if they, in case their situation didn't exactly meet all the criteria, at least they'd have some avenue.
There are cities that have pretty extensive tree ordinances. I represent a couple boards of appeals and we handle that, you know, then you can go all the way to having a full-time arborist for these things. It doesn't make sense
City Hall, I don't know.
here.
And if we're doing a workshop in September, we need to look at one of those cities. Was it mentioned Gilmer?
Gilmer County.
Gilmer County, yeah, that
They
makes
they
sense.
provided us with a copy of that. It should be in your packet. All right, well, at some point, we'll try to figure out, once we get what they give us, get it to you guys, and then we'll plan a day to get together and kind of spitball some ideas out there, see what sticks.
Yeah.
So, all right,
All right,
sounds good.
on to the next public hearing, which is. Yeah. All right, so the next one's gonna be an amendment to section 1501 of Article 15, which is changing the height, placement, area, and density requirements. But really, all it's basically saying is it's clarifying that the setbacks in the building code do not apply to the placement of either natural screenings, you know, like tree buffers. Doesn't apply to fences, and it doesn't apply to walls unless you're along the right of way. And if you're along the right of way, then it basically says you've got to be 4 feet off the right of way. There's some caveats to that. Number one, basically being that if the right of way is something that grew organically, that's maybe not otherwise specifically defined, then it provides for how that's going to be. If it is something where the right of way is wider than the physical roadway structure, then it defines how that is going to be handled. And then, yeah, so that's the one that is on basically on the table now. So with that, we'll open the public hearing. Is anyone wishing to speak in favor of this ordinance amendment? Come forward.
Yeah, we're in favor of this. One suggestion though is that you add walkways like walking paths, and then stairwells and handrails as well, just so that people can access like the corner of their property.
Anybody else wishing to speak in favor?
I'm definitely in favor of this. It doesn't make any sense that you cannot put a fence right there on your property line, privacy fence. Something I certainly want to be doing. I'm not so sure about the walkway and the rail and all that. I'm not sure about that.
Let's just clarify, this is so you don't have to get a building permit to put it in, right?
That's the next one.
That's the
That's
gist
next
of it.
No, that's the next.
Oh, that's the
This
next,
is-
one. Okay, gotcha.
This is for
Allowing it.
allowing someone to
Oh.
put a fence near their
Within
property
the
line,
setback.
as opposed to being 15 feet from their property.
I'm sorry, I got the current ordinance keeps us from putting it on the, oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Technically, you'd have to have your fence, 15 feet off the property line?
Does the
Yeah.
current ordinance specifically say fences, walls?
It doesn't specifically, but because a fence
Well,
in
how does
most
it-
cases would be considered a structure because they're permanently affixed to the ground by
Yeah.
our definition.
Okay.
That's what
So it's
creates. the-
changing the definition, or it's allowing it, so then you'd have to add other things in as well, like sidewalks and stuff like that, since it's permanent.
No, a sidewalk would be, I think would be different, because we do sidewalks right up.
Yeah, I know, that's why I'm just saying, this is real specific to fences and walls,
Fences, walls, natural screenings and other things of that nature, yeah.
so if you added sidewalks in,
That'd be a problem.
does it even relate, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well,
Let's-
sidewalk would be within the right of way. right?
Most likely would be.
I'm talking about a private walkway,
Oh,
private
like your-
stairs and so
okay.
forth, yeah, off of the sidewalk. I was just curious, I'm not sure how that would be.
Yeah, no, let's continue with the public hearing and then we'll get to that.
Oh, yeah, I'm
We'll
sorry.
Talk
Okay,
about,
I was
and
trying to
now we can
understand.
kind of flesh some of that.
I was
out.
trying to understand
Yeah,
their comments, yeah.
I think we can flesh some of that out.
All right.
Sure. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of it?
Any of our Zoom participants?
All right, well, with with that, we'll close the section for those wishing to speak in favor. Anybody wishing to speak in opposition? Anybody on Zoom?
Anybody on Zoom opposed to fences near your property line?
All right, hearing none, we'll close that public hearing, and then for this one, I'd suggest the discussion be when it, when we get to new business.
Okay, I got you.
So with that, we'll open the next public hearing, which is gonna be on section 20, section Article 20, section 2004. This is dealing with an amendment to the building permit requirements. Basically, right now, your building permit code says you have to have one for any building or structure. The main difference between those two is the building has a roof, the structure does not. So what we're, there's some other distinctions in that, but that's generally it. So what this amendment does is it basically creates a carve out for buildings or structures that are 64 square feet or smaller. Makes it where you don't have to get a building permit for every single small addition that you do. So with that, we'll open the public hearing. Those wishing to speak in favor of the amendment, you can come forward now.
We're in favor of this one as well. The one thing that I suggested to P and Z last night was that you increase the maximum square footage of this. Number I threw out was 300. They seem to think that that was way too large, but that's going to be up to you guys if you want to be somewhere in the middle on that or something like that. But I just feel like 64 square feet, 8 by 8. If you have a riding lawnmower, that's like barely enough space to store that. You can't put anything else in there. You can't really, there's no wiggle room to move around. So I think increasing the square footage makes sense.
Anybody else wishing to speak in favor? Anybody else?
Anybody on Zoom?
I have a question. This is Terry. So whatever the size is decided, a landowner can put 1 to 50. There's no limit.
Well, you're limited by whatever is in the zoning code, but what we're saying is that if you fall under a certain threshold of square feet, you don't have to get a building permit.
Understood, but my question is if you have, can you build the first one, then keep adding all these little structures on your property?
I think that'd just be geared by whatever the requirements were for the particular zoning ordinance. So, if you have I want to say it has an auxiliary building or an ancillary building limit in the code, then you'd be limited to that. If there's not one, then you're not limited now.
You're already not limited.
Okay, so then you're already not limited now. It just means you don't have to get a building permit every time you put one up.
But I see, I understand what Terry's saying. I mean, you could have a little mini village. If you.
But technically you could do that.
But you can do that right
You can do
now.
that
Yeah,
now.
but you have to get a permit to do it right
Correct.
now, right?
Correct.
Okay, so if you take that away, I could go in my backyard and have doghouse after dog. I mean,
Sure. Sure. yeah.
So it's,
Okay, anybody else? Anything else, Terry?
No, I just appreciate that point of clarification for everybody to be aware of the possibilities. Right now, you do have to go through a permit process. Thank you.
Anybody else want to say anything? All right.
is that opposition or not favor?
We'll close it in favor and we'll open it for opposition. Anybody opposed? All right, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing on that.
All right, public hearings being finished, we'll move on with our agenda. Let's go ahead and get a motion to approve our consent agenda. Joey makes that motion, Tom seconds, all in favor? Unanimous? All right, do we have an attorney report?
No attorney report.
No attorney report, we'll move on to old business. Y'all should have a copy of an ordinance to change our, to amend our fee schedule for building permits. which kind of addresses what Brian brought up, that our current zoning ordinances tell us that we're supposed to have a graduated system of fee schedule. We don't have that right now. So if we said that right now, the way this is written, anything 64 square feet or less, of course, we're talking about not having a permit from them anyway, so it'd be not applicable. Then anything above 64 square feet, but less than 300 square feet would only be $30 for the permit. Still be going through the permit process for anything larger than 64 square feet. And then what we refer to as constructed screenings. So we have a definition of screenings, which is a visible and audible barrier on your property. If it's not natural vegetation, if you're not growing trees and bushes to create that, then it's gonna be constructed. And so we threw in a $30 permit fee for that. So you'd still have to get a permit. That way the town's aware and can say, hey, this might not fit what your neighbors want. Or whatever guidelines we've got set up for that. So that's how this ordinance came to be. We talked about it briefly last month, and Warren constructed the document for us to look at and approve tonight. So is there any input from the council, any thoughts? Would this work for what we need to do? And this is just for our fee schedule. It's just changing adding a couple of layers to our fees.
May want to, whatever your decision is, unless it's just outright deny, because the schedule of fees is tied to the ordinance dealing with building permits under 64 square feet. If you're going to change that, we would need to amend this as well.
So are you saying that the building permit for building a privacy fence would be $30? Is that what you're looking at?
Possibly, that's what was put in there. I think it might fall under the 64 square feet. Also, I don't know how
Depending
to
on how long.
calculate. Yeah, how to calculate your square footage on a fence is kind of difficult. Because I think you're gonna go by what's on the ground, and there's only 6 inches wide, you got a lot of square footage there, so.
I'm curious clarification of something when we're talking about, and I just want to make sure, I think I understand. We're talking about building something first, like a fence or a building, okay? What if you were, and I think this is what we were kind of getting to before. Say I went up to Lakemont and bought one of those sheds for a tractor or whatever. Now, I'm not per se building that, but I've got the same effect. Is that, I mean, how does that fit into this? Is it,
How do we word that? Okay, what we said was anything above 64 square feet, anything under 300 square feet would be new structural construction, comma, additions, comma, and buildings moved to a new site that are accessory or secondary use in nature. So we're talking about secondary structures, not primary. So primary structure, your home, whatever, that's gonna still require the normal building permit.
okay,
But any secondary structures on that property, because you're only allowed one principal building on a lot.
right,
So anything beyond that, once you got your principal building, everything else becomes secondary, whether that's doghouse, playhouse, or storage for your lawnmower, tractor, whatever else, those would be secondary buildings. And sometimes like mine, I've got I think it's 12 by 16 tool shed, little workshop that I play in, that's on skids. It's not permanently affixed to the ground, but I still got a permit for it. And because it's a secondary building, it had to be close to my property line. I wanted to make sure that I was meeting all the requirements, so. I felt like
okay, so, but with our other, what we were discussing before, okay? we got a dog house or whatever, you went out and bought one, brought it in or whatever, or built one, okay, we're looking at doing something that where you don't have to get a building permit for that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, let's take that up. I want to build something. I'm tired of storing my lawnmowers in the garage or whatever. I want to get another building for that. Am I looking at having to get a building permit or?
That's gonna kind of depend on what you decide on this other one and the size. And whether we want to, if we want to have those permitted, then here's a fee schedule to include that. We can change that 300 square feet easily, or 64 square feet. Those are just some numbers thrown out. The reason 300 was picked was because it's smaller than a tiny home, which can be a whole different
That's
conversation.
where that's where I was.
And the county is about, we just had a meeting with the county today, and they're starting a study that we'll get to participate in, they'll include us on it, on trying to get ahead of some zoning issues like yurts, tiny homes, and things like of that nature. They're gonna do some research and start pulling some information together.
So all those tiny homes I bought to put in back in my place, I can't do.
You better do it right now. I didn't say, no assurances here. No, so yeah, it's just trying to find some balance
Right,
where you can build a place set for your kid and move it around the yard without having to come get a permit for it.
right.
But
That's-
someone wanting something bigger for storage, it's gonna be a little more permanent by its nature, even though you might be able to move it, would still have to meet some permanent requirements, make sure they're meeting the setbacks.
Right,
I think right now, you put 500 storage units on your property. We don't have a limit on it, so do we need to, at some point, maybe that's something zoning needs to look at too.
okay, now, when we're talking about this, we talked about buildings. What if I went out and got one of those metal canopy, does that fit in this as well?
Technically, that would be a building, if it's got a roof on it.
Okay.
And part of that definition of a structure is that it'd be permanent by nature.
Yeah,
Let me
there's-
find the word
so-
on that.
A building is any structure, and I'll get to the definition of that in a minute, but any structure, either temporary or permanent, above or below ground, having a roof or other covering, and designed, built, or used as a shelter or enclosure for persons, animals, or property of any kind, including tents, awnings, or vehicles used for the purpose of a building.
Okay,
So that's a
And then-
building.
So that's a building, and then structure is anything constructed or erected, the use of which requires more or less permanent location on the ground. So it's a fix, it's not something that just moves like those canopies you're talking about. Or which is attached to something having more or less a permanent location on the ground, not including utility poles.
okay, football season's coming. I'm gonna go out and get a pop-up Georgia red with black tent. Tommy's gonna come up and have a barbecue thing there. Do I have to get a permit for that?
I would think that
It's not
right now,
permanent in nature.
Permanently attached.
Permanent nature.
but it's still a building.
Yep.
By our definition, it would still be a building, so.
As long as you don't put a fence up. So it's
So-
structure.
There you go. So that brings us back to Brian's comment. Do we need to rethink the sizing of some of this?
I think we do.
Or is there a more common sense way to approach
Well, I
this?
can't, a standard canopy tent's 10 by 10
Exactly.
Right.
at a
That's
tailgate.
It's
Right.
more than your 64 feet.
That's 100 square feet.
I mean, I agree with what Tom, it's not permanent in nature. I mean, it's not like I'm gonna,
Let me look back at this real quick. So I think we said for the 64 square feet, not permanent in nature. Let me get back to that.
You did, so not permanently affixed.
Not permanently affixed. So if we change the size of that just a little bit to include a common canopy size, or go to the 300 square feet if we want to go that large. Because it would not be permanent. So like my tool shed almost is somewhat would be considered permanent because
It doesn't say that.
doesn't say it in this one, but it says it in the,
What you're.
one where we're saying you don't need you don't need a permit at all. If I can find it.
Yeah, to me, I think you want a balance that, I guess the way I'm looking at it, you want a balance that definitely would include a small dog house or doll house or, that the kids could play in, but you want to cut it off before you get into an in-law suite or,
Right.
something like that.
Yeah, so the ordinance we're talking about amending, the wording in it, and when we get to it in a minute, is that the foregoing notwithstanding, saying everything requires a permit, that no building permit shall be required for accessory buildings or structures under 64 square feet. They're not permanently affixed to another building or structure. So it's kind of given us, I think that's given us some flexibility on that. But it's the size of 64 square feet, maybe we need to rethink.
Definitely.
But I think we're hitting that by saying that it's not permanent in nature. So I think that would help exclude like some bigger storage sheds and in-law apartments and stuff. Which you can only still have only one primary building per lot. So.
There's a difference between a mother-in-law suite and a shed. And
That's right. Well, yeah.
So, I mean, we cannot account for every way that someone's gonna try to wiggle around and try to figure out a way around something. Unfortunately, so finding something that's kind of common sense ground that we can work from. So if we're talking about changing an ordinance, so we want to talk about that size definition here as
Yeah.
well.
What do you think, Tom? What size?
I don't know, but I keep, you threw me for a loop. And you mentioned canopy tent being 100 square feet.
Where I grew up was fairly rural, and the building codes there were 10 by 12, anything 10 by 12 or less, you didn't need a permit for.
So 120 square feet.
Yeah, and I mean, my parents have a 10 by 12 shed, it was built that size specifically because it didn't require all of that stuff. It kept the lawnmowers and the things that you're talking about. So I'm pulling that one simply from that experience. How much bigger is 300?
Twice that.
Craig?
12 by 16 is 192 square feet. I mean, that's your normal size you purchase out, in the, that's the size they sell you a lot of times. That just gives you an idea.
Okay.
It's pretty common size, yeah.
So 200 or less? I mean, I can't imagine people, I mean, I could when I was in college live in 200 square feet, but I just can't imagine people wanting to try to build a home that's 200
I
square
mean,
feet.
I think 200 is fair. That allow a shed, you want to put your tools in, you don't really have to do a permit for.
And the idea that it would
But
be,
then you fall into what we had concerns about dotting your property, but I mean, it's your
Or
property.
could we stay in there, a limit to how many of those you?
That would have to change another
We
ordinance.
have to admit the difference.
we would need to do a different ordinance for that.
Yeah,
I
you
think
can limit the square footage now, but then, or I'm sorry, or give it a square footage. Yeah.
Throw that back to planning and zoning, and let's go through that process.
Yeah,
Separate.
I think, because it's a valid point. I mean,
It is.
once you open it up, what's stopping
But-
somebody?
Nothing's stopping anybody from doing it now, right?
No, there's not.
Other than the fact.
No one's
that they-
really doing it. I mean, no one's complaining.
No, nobody's
You
doing
tell
it.
them they can't do it, here it goes.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's really that simple.
Right. So moratorium right now, no, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. You mentioned it, it's on.
It's gone, yeah,
Yeah.
so.
I think we just increased the square footage. I would recommend higher than 64. I would keep it around 12 by 16 or less, so 192, 200 or less. So you get a little bigger than that, I don't know.
All right.
And So the size really isn't the issue now. It's what the only concern I heard was multiple buildings, that had to be done through another advertising process. or something.
Yeah, we'll need to find where that fits.
You might want to look at, I don't know if this issue would come up or if it would even affect it, but you might want to look at the idea of, is that a on the ground footprint, square footage, if somebody decides to go up?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too.
You know,
It's
they go up, then they increase square footage, and then you got that issue, so.
Well, right now, it'd just be at
Just
200, so if you wanted to make it, 100 feet on one level, 100 feet on one level, then I guess you could do it that way, but total, you're gonna be limited to 200.
I just didn't want that to come up and become an issue.
And it shouldn't, it's just 200 square feet total, right?
200 feet.
Surface area. right?
Yeah, 'cause that's the way,
I mean,
a lot of times when
livable
you,
area.
yeah, when you read ordinances, you have to read it also within the context, if there's some discrepancy on how just the common everyday person's gonna interpret it, and they're gonna
Yeah.
interpret total square footage, not layered. So,
And there'll be a mini tower.
yeah, 10 by 10. Well, actually, we've got a height limitation that does apply here too, of 35 feet, so they can't go more than that. But
We don't say anything in there about utilities or anything like that.
I think if you get into utilities and plumbing, you're making you're making it permanent. Cause you're tying it into something, attaching it to something.
Well, I mean,
Power
what,
pole or
yeah, I mean, what,
septic tank.
what I was looking at when I was saying plumbing was if you had if you.
Outlets.
Well, that too, but like if you built something to where, you could pull in and wash your car. Or, if you wanted, for example, I don't know, like the building you have, do you have electricity lights to where you use tools and stuff like that? In there, that's kind of where I was
Right.
going, I'm thinking about.
Now I do in my outbuilding. I've got power run out to it.
And I don't have a drop cord I'm plugging in, so,
I mean, that's.
but that's just me, I can see the advantage.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe we need to address that with the other one, talking about numbers allowed. And so forth. Right now, we're just talking about a fee schedule. So if you want to say, and then we'll, of course, this is going to automatically roll back over in our future conversation a little bit about changing that size as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think the fee schedule is logical, just, I don't know about the amount of the money. I don't know how that relates with other counties, cities, et cetera.
what I did was I
I
grabbed
imagine it's.
roughly 1 hour of our clerk's time.
Yeah,
It's about $25 to $30.
so research that. So you have done your
Yeah,
fee
so
research. Okay, that's fine. If it's in line, that's fine. I don't know the values.
And what I'd probably do is just recommend we table the discussion on the fees, not right now.
Until we get the
Before we
size.
vote, let's go ahead and decide what we're gonna do on the side.
Yeah,
okay, that's correct.
all right, let's do that. Let's, let me get a motion to table this until we make a decision. Joey makes that motion, Tom seconds, all in favor. All right, let's move on.
All right.
New business. All right, we've already taken care of Ms. Whitmire. So fire report on vehicles and budget amendment request. Paul? Oh, well, oh, no, we're not. We're gonna get back. We're gonna see first of all, if we're gonna even have an election. Whether we have 3 candidates or not. If we only have 2 candidates, then there's no election. So we'll talk about that later, I guess.
She has to know before our next meeting.
Okay.
When's the final for qualified?
Well, mine's next week.
Okay, so, I mean, by next week, you'll know, right?
I mean, if we want to make a decision, and we want to discuss it, we definitely can. So let's go ahead and at least have some discussion about whether we should. The reason I had her look into it was more in line with the fact that we didn't know how much it was going to end up costing more to do an election. So the theory was that if it's going to be so much more, we could bring all of our elections completely back in-house and do complete paper ballots. But we still have to abide by the same laws. I mean, we have to hire out ahead of, for the early voting, we still have to hire those people on. Linda would actually have to go back to school, get recertified to do that, and we don't know when that class will be. On many other things, according to the numbers she's giving us here, we already budgeted for 5,000, and it's gonna come in under that, so. I mean, I would feel good just saying, let's just keep doing it the way we've been doing it. I think that would be fine, so.
We discussed this when we did the budget, and we had come to the conclusion to keep it the way it was for now,
Right,
until we got an estimate. So where we could discuss it further, right?
right.
Okay.
One of the things, I guess, to clarify, just to make sure, so if you only have two people that are, basically, so we don't have any state problems or whatever in not having an election. We just basically say, those are the only two that qualified, so be it, and it's done.
Yeah, if you only have two that qualify, you're getting to voted for yourself, so.
I would have almost thought that you would have had to have still done it in the event of writing, you know what I'm saying, or something like that. But you don't have
You
to.
know, the way write-in candidacy works isn't what most people think it is. You actually have to declare that you're gonna be a write-in candidate, and you got that within a certain, like, within a week of so theoretically, we won't know if we're gonna have an election until the week after next. Because if someone does step up and say, well, I want to be a write-in, they have to declare that following week within like 3 days or so. It's a really short window. So.
So what's the question? We've got it budgeted correctly. It's coming in less, $249.
And we can't change the location.
Right,
too
so we're
close.
good right now. I would just let it be automated, someone delivered equipment, et cetera. Just makes it easy on everyone. That, since we've got it budgeted, if we want to decrease our budget in this matter, then we need to discuss it, in the future.
And she said that they could do paper ballots, but I mean,
Yeah,
obviously
that would be a
didn't
little-
want
Yeah,
to.
that
I mean,
really
that's not
wasn't
what we
needed.
discussed
That's not
last
really what
year.
we were
Yeah,
looking at. It was, the only reason paper ballot came up was if we brought everything back.
Right.
So that's the only advantage.
And we could have a future discussion on the next election if we wanted to change it up because of the vote.
Yeah,
Right, okay.
so they're not,
And that's a max budget too, because it
Right.
could be less if
Sure,
we're sharing it
if
with
we're
the other
sharing it,
cities.
yeah,
yeah, and the county,
so
so.
I'm good. I
Yeah.
don't know what that means.
So I don't think, if that's the case, we're all good with just continuing on. I don't think we need a vote to do anything.
Changing.
We're not changing, so.
So, and the only thing was the paper ballots or electronic vote, is that that was the only.
I mean, she
other
gave,
thing.
she gave you that option.
She just gave us, said that she looked into it so that she would know
She
whether we could do it or not.
could do, it. We can do it if we want her to do it. But she didn't sound real excited about it, did she?
No, I wouldn't be. But I wouldn't be.
I mean, we're here, it's not like we got thousands of
Yeah,
votes to
it
count.
wouldn't take that
I
long,
mean,
but
we got
No.
a good healthy handful of votes and
Yeah, we had 93 voters last time.
so I can count that I myself and I'm not real smart. so. I mean, I got my questions after hearing, watching the news a few times about the electronic vote these days. I'm more comfortable with paper ballots, but I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze or not.
Technically, we do have a paper ballot system in Georgia. It prints that thing out, you can check it before you scan it in.
Yeah,
And if it's not right, that's your opportunity. You better make sure it's right.
yeah.
So,
Well, it all comes down to who's counting. It's not who's voting, but who's counting the votes anyway.
machine. So, all right, so since there's not gonna be a change there, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item. Our fire chief couldn't be here tonight. Paul couldn't be here. Something called him away last minute. What he was wanting to bring to you guys is that the rescue, I've got pictures somewhere. Rescues were running to a call on Panther Creek, blew the intercooler out for the turbo. And it cost pretty much his entire budget for the year to fix that truck last week. They did not spend, how much was it? 4,445.
45, 50,
So they didn't spend 4,550 of their equipment maintenance budget last year. So that went into the general fund, and he was gonna basically ask if y'all would approve to go ahead and move that money back into his budget for the remainder of this year.
Yes.
Because there's some, we need tires for at least one truck and another truck he'd like to get it looked at.
We need to make a motion on it.
Yeah, we
I'll
need
make
to
a motion.
Second.
Greg makes that motion. Tom seconds. All in favor? It's unanimous. Told him it would be. I didn't tell him it would be.
We can still do a Jimmy Young barbecue too.
We do. He also wanted to talk, he wants to come to you guys with another idea about trying to spur. We don't lack interest in the fire department. We lack some activity and training. We've got some people on our roster that aren't showing up. They're not getting trained. Not talking about her.
Inside joke, sorry, guys.
Anyway, so he's trying to come up with some ideas to generate some more interest in getting people interested in training and showing up for some different things. But he'll come back to you guys with that later. I don't want to speak for him on that. He's got his own ideas. So we'll go ahead and move on to our T-Splosh intergovernmental agreement. I met today with Raven County. There is a sheet in front of you guys. Not quite like that, but sort of that format. And there's some up on the table for anybody out there. Raven County wants to do a T-Splosh. They are estimating a total projected amount of at least $17 million to be brought in with a 1 penny sales tax. The only way they get 1 penny or the 1% sales tax is if the cities all go on board with the T-Splosh. If we don't go on board, if there's one holdout, we don't get an IGA, then they can only charge 0.75% sales tax for the T-Splosh. So that's what the other number is beside the 17 million at the top, that 4,250,000 is how much we would lose if we don't, as a whole, the whole group would lose if we don't get an IGA signed for this T-Splosh.
We need a motion for this?
Well, we've got a couple of caveats. So our portion on this sheet that you have would be looking at $92,287 in total revenues over a five-year period or 4-year period, 5-year period. We would get a total of $92,287 out of the T-Splosh. This is based on some numbers DCA carries and DOT has, and these are all pre-formulated and somewhat non-negotiable. Even if we don't get a IGA, if government don't decide to sign on, we would still get, if it passed, we would still get 23,000 less than that 92. Then we would still participate in the T-Splosh. This isn't like a normal splosh where if we don't get an IGA, we don't get anything. This one we still get a portion of. Okay, so there's the groundwork and the foundation. We met today. The county and the other cities would like to change it up just a little bit and guarantee that we and Dillard both get at least $100,000 out of the T-Splosh.
Yeah, so they're willing to up our percentage based on the fact they're gonna go from 3 million to 12 million. Yeah, I totally understand that.
Yeah. So they're willing to cover that out of their portion for us. Or because of these blanks off to the left here of the other cities, our percentage may change. And Linda did catch an error. In 2019, we had 14,000? 12,222. So that changes our percentage from 0.54 to like 0.68, I think. So we actually were gonna, but with that number changed by itself, we would get 102,000 right now.
Yeah, so it's gonna take less.
Yeah. So, but when these other two cities plug their numbers in, that may change our percentage again. So what we were getting was a guarantee of at least 100,000 or whatever percentage works out to, whichever is the higher. They would buffer that for us. So, so based on that, we're gonna meet next Thursday to finalize the IGA. And I'd like to be able to sign it, but we're gonna have some caveats, and that's part of the reason we have Warren here tonight, was to kind of go over his concerns with this particular contract.
So originally, the concerns with the contract was there's a lot of requirements that have to go into it. One, it's got to show what the total projected calculations are. That's this. So we now know what those are. The second part of it is that if you have an IGA, you get whatever percentage is in the IGA. If you don't, then it's when it becomes that non-negotiable percentages. The IGA that I had at the time did not have any percentages. Now, you can calculate some of those if you do it the non-percentage way. This is what it would be under that formula, and that's basically what they're using to make up these percentages to begin with. But what Mike and I had discussed was, okay, well, what's it gonna be, and is this the final form? I think he's got some clarity on that at the meeting that happens today. So there's that. The other thing is we've got to have a list of our road projects that we're gonna, fund with the proceeds from T-Splosh, which we don't yet have, but we would have to have at the time that we adopted or entered into the intergovernmental agreement. And so what the county has suggested, and what Mike had asked me about, is that Social Circle, which is kind of down in my neck of the woods, one county over, has a project list that basically says they're going to spend it on road paving, maintenance, and widening and repair. And it's, for any roads that are inside the city. Now, the other caveat is statutorily, you've got to have 30% of those funds dedicated to projects that are like DOT, state approved infrastructure projects. You can handle that by virtue of the fact that we're now in this verified comp plan. And the comp plan, DCA is basically attests to the fact that the comp plan provides for those statewide transportation projects. So I think that if we can adopt a list of road projects similar to what Social Circle did, it also covers your 30% by virtue of being included in that comp plan.
Yeah.
Okay. So we would need to basically come up with the list of road projects, which can be broad. And then because the percentages aren't finalized, so they've told Mike, we'll give you 100,000 or the higher amount under the percentage. We don't have any of that in writing. So I don't want y'all to just adopt the IGA that says we're going to get blank percent. But here's the big issue is that the county has got to call for a referendum. And the guidance that I saw from ACCG said it had to be 90 days prior to the election, which is already passed. But I don't find any statutory authority for that. The closest thing I can find, it's not directly on point, says it's 60 days. What I'm told is that it basically depends on your supervisor of elections, which in the counties down here where I am, it is 60 days. So I think that what the county's schedule is that they've got to call for the referendum by like September 1st. And their meeting is August 24th, and that's when they plan to do it if we can do it that way. So the problem with that is unless we're going to have a special called meeting, we've got to be in a position where if we can work out these issues like the blank percentages and the road projects, we'd like to go ahead or, have you all approve it conditioned on it being satisfactory to, the mayor, me, and Linda, essentially.
Basically, they also, real quick, well, because it just reminded me of that, they're also talking about combining efforts every time a road project's coming up for bid. And we would include all the cities and the county projects into one project so that we could maybe get better pricing on materials. And if we have to hire a big crew to come instead of some of the smaller crews, they'd only be coming up hauling their equipment up one time. They might start on one end of the county and just start doing projects as they move north and save us some. And we could get extra extra road mile paving out of that.
Yeah, if we made a list of projects and the value, just to say that a roadway project specifically, if the value comes up higher than, let's say, $100,000, $150,000, can y'all use that for any kind of negotiation with the county on saying, hey, look, we've got this much infrastructure we need to get complete? Can we bump that up above 100,000?
The way I read the statutes, yes, if you have an IGA,
Yeah.
then you follow the percentages set forth in the IGA, there's your negotiation.
Right, so it gives Mike a little bit more, say, hey, man, I've got this problem, this. I mean, there's some real issues out there we could pay, you know. take care of.
Well, we want to keep it very general as far as what we turn in.
Yeah.
Next week. So Social Circle literally is just, their wording was road maintenance and improvements.
Right, we
That
can make it
covers-
that simple, but
Yeah.
do you have to have a line item of values?
I think you're supposed to have at least, pull this up.
It seems like you'd want some.
Why do you keep it so vague?
Just so it's easier and quicker. and get through, I
So that
guess.
you don't, because if you put in like with Elmig, we put in what roads
You
we're
have to,
actually
you
going
have
to
to
work on.
do it.
We have to do those
Okay.
roads.
Instead of, if you had a repair you really needed to make that just popped up over the winter or whatever,
Right.
you
Yeah,
don't
and
have an
since-
Elmeg, you can't spell that, you can't spend that money.
Right, and with the T-Splosh, H-Splosh, this is a 5-year projection. You're not gonna get that 92,000 or 100,000
Right.
up front. It's gonna be a
That's why I'm
long
concerned
process.
about getting as much as you can, if you can. Not, don't push them too far, but I'm looking at the values here. You know, Raven County could help out a little.
In reality,
Yeah.
the county's trying to rush this.
Okay,
ACCG, which is their,
I'm not trying to hurt the county.
no, I mean, and I understand why they're
It's
trying
very
to
last
do it.
minute.
Just go ahead and do it now, but
Yeah.
the planning documents that guide this process talk about starting in January and coming up with the list. I think, there's probably also some need to have some public input, that type of stuff. You get through all of that, and then you're in July when you start negotiating your IGA, and you're calling for the resolution, by the 1st of September. What happened here basically was in July, it was like, hey, we'll see if we can do this by November. So everything's truncated. If it doesn't get through, they can still call for the T-Splosh, they just don't get to collect as much. And ideally, you would do it next year, but the thing is, there's a general election this year, which means you put it on the ballot, it's cheaper, you don't have to hold all of the stuff. The other thing is that, as I understand it, based on our spending from last year on roads, if that were to get factored into the formula, if it were adopted, say, next year, then your percentage would actually go up.
Yeah, because over 5 years.
That's right.
Yeah.
So,
Well, they base it on the last 3 years reported.
Right, but they
so-
multiply it times the average, right? And then they multiply.
Right,
it
so
times
our
5 years,
average for
so it'd
those
be
3
higher than
years-
100 grand.
Really low, and then we spent all our money last year,
Yeah.
Oh, that's-
which doesn't count.
With benefits,
Yeah.
but right now, it seems like all the other municipalities were on board.
Yeah, and there's
we'd
also
be
a chance
dealing
that it
with-
won't get passed.
There is a chance.
It didn't get passed in
Average,
Aberdeen.
and that's the problem.
Always
Yeah,
a
that-
chance.
Right, and so all it says is you gotta have a list of the projects and the purposes qualifying as a transportation purpose.
Right.
And then number 2 is the estimated or projected dollar amount allocated for each transportation purpose from the proceeds of it. So if you
So
leave it,
purpose is resurfacing versus.
and you just basically you're going to use all of it to fund that purpose.
Road maintenance and improvements, and then whatever the dollar amount we think we would end up getting. Plug into that other section.
So we can only plug in, from what I just understood you, only plug in transportation related projects. I mean, obviously that's roads, but
Let me read you out a list. real
that's
quick.
what it's
We were hoping it would
restricted
go
to.
to water, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say water on there.
But we can do roadways to tanks like we did, to help improve
Those,
that. Yeah, we've done that. but-
So T-Splosh must be used for transportation purposes, which means roads, bridges, public transit, rails, airports, buses, seaports, and all accompanying infrastructure and services necessary to provide access to these transportation facilities, including but not limited to acquisition right of way, construction of roads, streets, bridges, sidewalks, and bicycle paths, renovation and improvement of roads, streets, bridges, including resurfacing. We have 2 bridges that we need to talk about at some point. Relocation of utilities to put in new roads, improvement of surface water drainage from roads, streets, bridges, patching, leveling, milling, widening, shoulder prep, culvert repair, and the list goes on. So sidewalks are still included in that, bicycle paths are included in that.
Well, I mean, we'll blow through $100,000. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind we could at heartbeat.
And the county said they've actually been
I just wish
neglecting,
they would give us. a
yeah,
little bit more.
they've been neglecting a lot of their infrastructure over the years.
Yeah.
They actually need to go in, part of what they're talking about is using money to cut trees back from some of the right of ways because the trees shade the road so much that the moisture never goes away and that destroys the road. So that's one of the reasons we want to push for the T-Splosh is to have money that they can focus just on the roads and get some major repairs done. So they've got some big projects lined up, so.
I guess if they get the 12,300,000, we can ask for some favors. Well, to accomplish something.
Yeah, and they were very open to doing everything they could to stretch our
Yeah.
dollar amount as much as they can, even if it's to help by going in and incorporating our project in with the county projects. Because then you're gonna get a lower rate, lower per mile rate. And so you're gonna, we can add mileage to our infrastructure projects. And especially if we keep it vague enough, it's just road maintenance and improvements. Then we're able to stretch that further. They gave an example of how they bid theirs out. They want to do the grinding, they want to do X number of inches per cubic feet, so on and so forth, so. But they said they do all the bidding process for us, we just tell them what we wanted done. So they were willing to go that route with us too.
So what do we need to do here for, as far as decision wise, to keep this thing on track or moving forward? Is there an item that we need to make a decision on here?
The first thing you need to do is develop or adopt a project list.
Correct.
So that's the thing. I don't think that's actually on the agenda, so we need a motion within the agenda to have that.
Well, what's the general time frame? I mean, what do we have a deadline that we can get back to them with that information?
The county's gonna adopt the referendum call
8/24.
August 24th.
Yeah, so we need to give you guys permission tonight, if everyone agrees, to allow you to make that decision or sign the IGA,
Yeah,
right?
That's basically it. So the first
And
thing,
then I need to come up with a project list with Mike or whatever on the
Yeah.
infrastructure.
we would need a project list, which would have to be adopted.
Right,
Then on the IGA, I mean, the structure of the IGA is fine. There's some terms in there that have been left blank that they've met about today. That's the stuff where we say, look, the IGA is fine, provided that it has the percentages and the other stuff filled in and some of that.
but the project list would have to be adopted by the council.
Yes,
Yeah.
because the project list has to be part of the IGA.
But what I'm understanding from the
I
way
understand that.
the way all this is laid out is we don't have to come up with necessarily specific streets that we're wanting to do.
We
We're
just have to
saying-
use the vague comment, which y'all
Vague
said in tonight's meeting to okay it and come up with a project list that falls underneath that.
Right,
Right.
and you can do it
Statement.
either way, but assuming you don't want to say we're gonna pave, the street right out here.
Yeah.
You just want to say we use it where we need it.
Yeah, I understand.
So for example, City of Covington in their list says safety improvements, intersection improvements, paving, resurfacing. That's all under roads.
Yeah.
Okay, then they're gonna do bridge construction and maintenance, so that's classified under bridges. They're gonna do airport master plan implementation, so that falls under the airport. And then they do sidewalks and paved trails, so that'd be sidewalk and bicycle paths category. And then public parking infrastructure, which they classify as related to infrastructure. So Social Circle just said road maintenance and improvements classified as roads, and that was it. That was their project list.
All right, we could do that, and then the projects list can be adopted at the next meeting, but it go ahead and allows you to move forward with the IGA, right?
We would need the project list.
Oh,
We have to
prior
turn
to the 24th,
Yeah, we have to turn the project list with the IGA.
Yeah, the
Okay.
project list is an exhibit.
but you gotta adopt it tonight. I mean, you gotta adopt, then you'd have to adopt the project list. The project list doesn't have to be detailed. It can be that one statement.
Can you keep it as general as Social Circle did, for example, roads and bridges and this and that?
I guess we're asking a question again. How do you move forward?
I think I mean,
Motion
like.
to approve with mayor or clerk edits. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it's that way, but I'm not.
But you can do the roads, bridges would be separate. If you did
That's
bridges,
where
you
I'm
have to
trying to
have
go.
that in separate.
Yeah, if we were gonna do a
Section.
bridge, that
This
would be a
is
separate.
time sensitive.
Yeah, I'm
What do we
not-
need to do tonight?
I know, I'm trying to figure out what's needs to be done
That's what I'm
tonight.
trying
Yeah,
to
I'm
figure
not getting there.
Yeah,
Trying to.
no, let me pull this thing up, but
Yeah.
I think we just have to basically come up with a project list, which we can do here now.
You'd have to do it now. Okay.
Yeah, we would need to do that first. Well, we back up. First thing we need to do is amend the agenda to add an item.
Yeah.
Which is the project list.
Right.
Then we adopt the project list, and then we'll talk about the IGA.
So just what I'm understanding is that we need, our project list can either be all just roads, or if we want to do a sidewalk with it, or we want to address some of our bridges with it, then we have to itemize, or not itemize, but break those out into separate categories. So we can, Social Circle just did just roads. They didn't do anything but roads.
And the way I read the statute is that Social Circle, Porterdale, or, Porterdale and the other ones in Newton County didn't do it right.
Oh, well, we should
Because,
use them as an example.
yeah, well, and the reason is Gerard Davis, is special counsel for Raven County, their general counsel for Newton County. So the same lawyers, same folks, it's there, and I'm not saying that you, here's what the statute says: a list of the projects and purposes qualifying as transportation purposes proposed to be funded from the tax. So to me, that means we've got to have a list of the actual projects.
Gotcha.
So unless we want to have a special meeting next week and let Craig and myself go.
And I would love to leave that thing broad. I like the idea, because that's how you do it in SPOS funds. We're going to use it for public safety. And then what you buy within that's fine. But I mean, that is the language, a list of the projects and purposes qualifying as transportation purposes. And then it talks about the estimated or projected dollar amount allocated to each transportation purpose. So the amount of money that you're going to spend, in 2 words, project and purpose, the allocation of the money that you're going to spend just has to be for the purpose. That can be your broad strokes thing. But because the list has to have projects and purpose.
But would that not be like they've got there, like road maintenance and improvements, that's the project, the purpose is for roads. If it was
So
bridge
projects-
replacement,
projects-
that's the project, and then the purpose. is
Does the project have to be specific to a road? A named
List of
road?
roads and how many.
Or can it be like citywide, city roadway resurfacing, 150 grand? I wish we'd get 150 grand, by the way, because everybody else is getting like, next one up's like 500,000. But anyway, that's another thing.
There isn't, it's not clear.
Okay, so if we went projects,
Yeah.
just example. City roadways,
And then that-
resurfacing, because that's generally what we do. We don't do much milling or anything else. We don't have enough money. Which we should mill up and resurface the way they did out here. But resurface, et cetera,
And the purpose is road.
roads, right?
That'd be fine. And if it, that's probably how every other city in Raven County is up there.
Yeah, so city roadways, that's general. And then your purpose be resurfacing for maintenance, whatever. And then your value is your value, whatever. you want to
Yeah,
put
we'll
towards
plug
it, As
that.
long as it's,
So the value can just be per purpose. It
right,
doesn't have to
right,
be
that's
per
perfect.
project.
Okay, I got you.
So the projects are resurfacing.
Generally speaking, around here, that's what we mainly can afford to do.
Patching and
Yeah, patching and resurfacing, yeah.
Craig, a couple of times people have brought up the idea of some sort of a guardrail or something up here on River Street, where it's so, if somebody's. slipping up
Now, you
out
get in the
there,
guardrail, you're gonna get into shoulder requirements, which are become,
Yeah.
legal issues,
So that's
because it's
why-
not grandfathered in. We run into it on the state highway system all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm asking. I don't know if any of
Yeah,
that.
no,
could be
you're gonna
plugged
get into a
any of
whole
this,
book of worms there.
but One of these days, somebody's gonna miscalculate.
Craig, I don't know if you have social service money or Newton County's
No, I don't
list,
have it.
but it's a spreadsheet. He's gonna grab it.
That's fine.
I think we can do it the way that they've got it listed now, in the title of this, it's got the broad headers of project, it's jurisdiction, so the county, each city.
Yeah.
Project, and then the projects are broad, which they should be,
Right,
and then the purpose is even broader than that, it may include several projects.
right. And that could allow us to pinpoint where we want to spend the money instead of being pinned down to a road that may not need it as
Yeah.
bad as another section.
And I wouldn't recommend that you get so specific as saying like, we're gonna pave that street.
Yeah.
And for example, I mean, we have some situations where we could use some widening in some areas around. I don't know, we have to check into.
Yeah, we could put something like this together in a heartbeat, just put it on a spreadsheet and just list the ones we want. And then, these are fairly broad, I mean.
Well, and that's the name of the game and everything that is special purpose sales tax, is leave it as broad, so you have discretion to move it back and forth.
Right, and that's been our problem in the past.
And then we've got, LMIG money we can include into these projects. And then we've got, other SPOS funds still sitting around for roads as well, so we'll be able to stretch some of this out. And kind of,
Storm drains, I'm not seeing them mentioned in here, but that's something we need to look at as well, but anyway. Paving, resurfacing and storm drain improvements, is that hard to, is that be
Well,
okay?
each
That's
thing
leaving
you're
pretty
gonna
vague.
do, you're gonna need to break it into its own, like they did with their category, and they give an estimated cost for each one,
Yeah,
so.
well, they broke it down into cities, but then they were vague underneath each city, they were just like paving and resurfacing roads, safety improvements, including pedestrian.
But the
crosswalks.
county, but
But we
like,
would go storm drain improvements, et cetera, would be for drainage, obviously.
but you need to put how much of the money that you're wanting to use toward that.
Yeah, no, so I wanted to stay in the roads. You need to ask for more money. The next closest guys are 494,000 for Sky Valley and 419 for Tiger. It's Tallulah and Dillard are stuck at 72 and 92.
And that's because it's
Might
based
be.
on how much.
Yeah, I know what it's
money
based
that's
on.
past 3
I
years.
totally understand what it's based on. We have
Sky Valley's
probably
got
just
like 30-something miles of road.
30 miles.
And that's what's on the right, far right of that column.
Yeah.
is, how many road miles they've got. So the county's 361.
Tiger's only got 6 and they got 419,000.
Yeah, I was wondering about that
I mean,
too.
I can't relate it that way. I understand, but they want to pass this as fast. We probably need the money, but
Yeah. Our problem is that our 12 miles that they're letting us include,
Yeah, I
some of
know.
that's on the Habersham side,
yeah, I totally understand that.
but
But I
they're,
mean,
they're including it.
so, but they were offering you $100,000, right? They're
Yeah,
getting-
as a
they're gonna-
minimum. As a minimum, they're offering us 100. And Dillard was happy with that.
Oh, well, that's something we'll trust y'all to do. I mean, if we give you, if we say, hey, sign the IGA. go on.
So, do we think we can come up with a project list tonight? Or do we wanna,
It seems fairly simple. I mean, City of Tula Falls project paving / resurfacing, is that too general?
No, I think that's fine.
And then what purpose is roads and then estimated cost. And there's other projects we would need to think of. I know there's a drainage.
well,
Drainage
we've
stuff.
got LMIG and some others. We've
So
got
we
new
can, we
LMIG
can
coming.
utilize that. So
We
we'll
can
just
for
use
tour
this
stuff
money
like
to
that.
get our paving.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's what we can.
Patching and paving, I'm sorry, add patching and that. So yeah, we could do City of Tallulah Falls, project paving, resurfacing and patching, or patching.
Yeah, some possible
First.
widening, and I don't know exactly.
We could do that when we do
Yeah.
the, if you get in wide, you can get in the GAB, we can, but that'll fall underneath this. It should be fine.
And,
No one's out here checking what we're doing. They just want to
Yeah.
know that you're spending on that.
Yeah,
You
no,
got to
and-
write off on it.
Right, and we're not gonna,
I mean, it is subject to audits, but in the sense of, if you can show that the money you got from T-Splosh went into a segregated account and it was used to pay for a road purpose.
And then they say estimated cost, we would just go ahead and estimate all of T-Splosh towards the roadways and then use our SPOS and other funds to handle any other drainage issues, GAB, et cetera.
Yeah,
Water, okay,
so I do, so.
we'll have one item then.
Okay, yeah, and that's what I'm getting at, is projects and purpose, but now that I'm looking at this spreadsheet Mike's got up that you have, there are projects, there are purposes, and
Mhm.
there's a cost.
Right,
So if you're gonna leave it broad where the project is, repaving and maintenance,
right,
and then the purpose is road,
right,
and then the cost is basically 100% of that,
that's
and
correct,
there's your project.
that's it,
Yeah,
we could do that.
okay.
I mean, if everybody's okay with that.
All right, let's let Joey get back in. We'll get a motion to amend our agenda. So get a motion to amend the agenda to adopt a project list for T-Splosh.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Craig motions, Joey seconds, all in favor? Unanimous. So let's go on and let's, I guess, get a motion to approve that project list.
That project list.
The one that Craig, you wrote out.
Someone else make a motion.
Motion to approve the project list.
Like that.
Okay, Tom makes the motion. We have a second, Craig seconds, all in favor? Unanimous project, and the project list, just for the record, is roads.
Paving, resurfacing and patching,
Patching.
purposes roads, and
It's
it's 100%
100%
value.
whatever we're getting. All right,
Do you need to add drainage on there? I don't know, it's like I said.
We decided we would use SPOS money for that instead of trying to generalize it here, make it simpler.
the other splosh, not the T-Splosh.
Yeah.
So, all right, then, based on that, how do we want to word the motion to adopt the IGA?
So now we've got the project list. What I would do is make a motion to approve the form of the IGA conditioned upon the highlighted portions that were in the packet being negotiated to the satisfaction of mayor, legal counsel, and clerk.
All right, motion to approve the IGA on the condition of the highlighted mayor and clerks.
Yeah, just.
Negotiation of.
Negotiation.
highlight areas.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
To the satisfaction of, really him, but
Go for more
the
money.
three of us will, yeah,
Communicate.
yeah, I mean, it's,
All right, so Tom's making that motion. Do we have a second? Greg will second. Any other discussion? No other discussion. All in favor? Unanimous. All right. That was a little more.
yeah,
All right, so let's, next item on our agenda is to discuss changes to section 15-56 regarding burn permits in the town. Reasons came up is that for some reason, and no one seems to know why, the state legislature decided that the hand piled vegetation, when you're burning hand piled vegetation, 6x6 foot area of brush, that you no longer needed to report that to state DNR. So state DNR took that to mean that they no longer have to issue permits. Section 1556 in our ordinance specifically says that you get your burn permit from DNR. So we kind of need to open that up. My suggestion would be that we reword it to say that you need to get a burn permit from the issuing authority approved by council.
So DNR is not issuing any more
They are issuing for
burn permits?
machine piled vegetation
Oh, okay,
and building sites. If
yeah,
you're gonna be burning there, you still have to get a permit from DNR. So, and there are other restrictions, like you have to have air curtains, this and that and the other. But for just the garden, just for you, me, and anybody else wants to burn a little brush in our backyard that we cleared up, we no longer can get a permit from DNR. Our ordinance
I
says
never
you need
knew
to
I
have
had
a
to get a
permit.
permit.
Yeah.
So to me, this brings up an interesting question. So here brings up an interesting question. If you're wanting to burn some brush in your garden spot or whatever, do we need a permit? Do we want to require a permit? The advantage to having a permitting system in place from a fire perspective is it tells you if there's a day that is really a bad idea to burn. And so that sort of forces people to go get something so that they know whether it's safe to burn that day. There is a program we can buy, we can participate in with the counties that costs 40 cents per permit for us we'd have to pay. We can pass that on, but 40 cents per permit.
Does the,
In Habersham County, White County, Stevens County, maybe Raven County are all gonna go that direction.
does the counties, do Raven County and Habersham have their own permit process?
Raven did not, Habersham did, but they're doing away with it. And that's what kind of brought this to light, which
So
they,
we can say, go to your issuing county, look at
yeah, but now they're gonna be going with this other program.
Oh.
So. So we're gonna need to address that, whether we wanna continue doing the permits, we can bring it all in-house, but then Linda would have to issue permits during the week, and then on the weekend, people wouldn't be able to get a permit.
But to build a fire in your backyard in a fire ring, you don't have to have a permit.
No, warming
This is
fires
just brush.
and contained
Yeah.
fires, you don't have to have a permit for already. But, yeah,
Just to clarify.
so of course, we have a stipulation that above 2,000 feet, you can't burn you can't do brush piles, you can't do anything. I mean, you can still do a contained warming fire, just not an open fire like a brush fire.
Mhm.
Good fire pit.
Yeah, you can have a fire pit. But. And cooking fires are allowed without a permit.
Okay.
So I need. Yeah, I
What's
need
the
to
easiest
settle.
way around that?
17.
The easiest way would be to reword the ordinance. We'd have to, you didn't draft it, I just threw something out there, I think. We'd have to get Warren to draft us an ordinance for us to pass later on that says, and I think it'd be as simple as that it's whatever, they have to get a permit from whatever issuing authority you guys choose at any given time. So that gives you some flexibility if something else comes up later on, we're not tied into one.
But who can you choose?
This one company that Habersham's looking at, I just don't have enough information
They're
on.
making it private?
Yeah, it'll be privatized.
I got you.
So their cost will be, every time someone calls for a permit or goes online and gets a permit, it'll cost the county 40 cents. And
God.
so,
Can we do something as simple as just saying you don't need a permit, but you have to call and
Yeah.
let 911 know that you're burning them? So they can let the fire department know?
yeah, we can do whatever we want on it, and that might be a good idea.
Is there any liability to the city if you do that?
No, the state law actually, when they rewrote it, all the burden and all the liability falls on the person doing the burning.
Still the owner,
Yeah,
okay.
it's still the owner. It's very clear that,
So minimum, we could like Linda said, we could put something simple in there to please notify.
Yeah.
Local authority, local.
yeah, we could go that simple, just call, or we could have a,
Do we have a big problem with it here? We really don't, do we?
no,
So we need to try to just make it simple.
yeah.
As soon as you create something more simple, it will be a problem.
The one advantage to the Forest Service, the way they did it, they didn't charge you anything, just had to make a phone call, well, it put you on record as to where you were in case you had a
Had a
problem.
fire, right?
And then they would ban it in particularly dry weather conditions,
Sure.
they'd say, no, we're not gonna do it, because it's too dry.
And we,
And we could do that. The fire chief could be in charge and say, hey.
yeah, and we do have the code red. We could put the burden on the fire department to say, to go up the road and check what the fire danger is for the day. Because, I mean, it's just on the edge of town.
If you hope so happen to get a permit.
Yeah.
right.
Well, we could just send out on the code red and make it a policy that anytime it's a high danger day,
Sure.
that we send a notice out to the public saying that you cannot burn today.
You'd like to think everybody has common sense on that, but they don't. I got you.
Well, sometimes it's a wind condition and humidity levels. So And they're projecting, they're saying, well, the wind's gonna change at this time of the day, so they'll say, no, we're not gonna burn today. So,
Now, the state legislation changed this?
yeah, and it went into effect, we didn't catch it, it went into effect beginning of August.
Why did they change it?
No one seems to know why, no one can give a straight answer. So right now, we
Because
have
one of them owns that private company.
probably, well, actually, that company, I think, is out of Ohio. I think the
Yeah.
company's out of Ohio.
Yeah,
They'll talk to each other.
I'm a little bit leery of having
Okay.
an outside source. in this.
We don't have to make a decision.
No, but having this conversation, I think I know what direction we go.
Yeah, you just go that direction and we'll.
And we'll try to
discuss
figure
it
something out, and then we'll bring that back for a final decision.
My permissions.
One concern is, right now, if someone wants to do a burn, they can't return it, they'd be in violation of our ordinance. Is there something we can put in place?
We can simply ignore it.
Yeah, but then the neighbor calls and.
I got you.
We're like a reverse moratorium. Is there anything we can do?
How long has it been in effect in the state legislature?
It went into effect August 1st.
So since August 1st, we've been taking a chance.
Well,
I know.
we could do like the Forest Service just did, we could just rescind our ordinance that requires it, and then it's,
It's actually only one section that requires that. It's at
Yeah,
1556.
there's got a point there, and
It's
that'd
by
be fairly
itself.
simple, and then just reestablish it once you come up with
yeah,
something.
and then see how it
Then
works.
we're not in, yeah, that'd be simple.
It's 1556.
15.
And I guess if the
56.
Forest Service can quit doing it, we can too.
Do you have to advertise or something?
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
So the ordinance 15. Yeah.
It's not zoning.
Yeah, that's what. If it's zoning, yeah, you gotta.
I got it, that's what
No,
I'm
it's
checking.
not
Yeah, I
zoning.
think it's actually 14, right? Is there only 15?
Oh,
It says 15-56, but
I may have gotten the
the
wrong
wrong number.
Let me see, it's under fire 14, it is 14,
All right, and it's.
Mike, did you say Habersham County is still,
and it is 1456.
Habersham County's doing it through this third party company?
Yeah,
So does that
Yes.
mean that anybody that's burning here in Tallulah Falls on the Habersham County side, do they have to call Habersham County?
no, we wrote our ordinance to be that anyone within the city limits
Goes
would
to
just go
our-
strictly with DNRs.
Oh, okay.
And that way it covered everything because,
But if we rescind it, then yes, the Habersham would switch over to Habersham. Raven wouldn't have anything covered.
Yeah, and then Raven
Would be covered.
has nothing, so we
Yeah.
just don't do it.
Right, so you're right. You can rescind it, like, I think it's best, then we can change it, we can
Yeah.
advertise it.
Just
from there.
Hash it out at a later date and see what we need to put in or take out.
Yeah, a lot more.
Yeah, for the same thing up till.
Yeah, a lot more.
Shall.
Short time.
yeah, that would work. I think that would work. Fix it later. Yeah. So we don't want to completely obliterate 1456.
Okay, is there a specific one?
I think because it talks about appropriate permits for burning below the elevation of 2,000 feet shall be obtained from, right now, Georgia Forestry. So what we would say now is that any burning below the elevation of 2,000 feet shall notify town hall. And they can
That would be the
message.
future ordinance, right?
Well, that'll be the one that.
You couldn't change it now, could you?
Probably need to write it.
We still have the section up above that says.
What does it say right now?
Right,
I'm sorry.
right now,
What does it say right now?
right now it says the appropriate permits for burning below the elevation of 2,000 feet should be obtained from the Georgia Forestry Commission. I sort of think I probably just leave it right now, if I can't obtain one, then.
Oh, yeah, well, the appropriate permits, if there's no permit to be gotten,
So I
there's no
would just
permit,
leave it,
and the state's not requiring a permit.
leave it, and then we'll deal with whatever amendment you want in the next one.
Okay,
Because that, we are, I mean, the ordinance that does have to be written.
right.
Well, plus there are some permits that they would
They
still
still
get.
do need to have
So
permits.
just leave it as the appropriate permit. There is no.
There is no permit for that, so it's not, okay, yeah, so we were worried about nothing. Happens. Worry about nothing. Okay, so no change. We'll bring back some new revision on that in ordinance form to be approved at a later date. Let's see what tax digest. I'm gonna shoot that one over. Trying to get back in time, so we gotta talk about our tax digest again. The state, if we get revalued, for Tom's sake, if a new valuation on property comes in and it elevates the value of properties in town, and we leave our millage rate alone, the state requires us to advertise that that is a tax increase. So the easy way out is to do what we call a rollback on the millage rate, so that the actual dollar amount coming out of the pockets of the taxpayers don't change. And that's what we need to discuss tonight. Do y'all want to do a rollback? Or do we want to talk about leaving our millage rate the way it is, keeping in mind that we keep rolling our millage rate back, but the cost to do business in town is going to be going up. So, but that's a very delicate conversation to have. We make a decision in the next month or so that we can get out, get bills sent out for our taxes. So Linda can explain a little bit better what we need to.
So the first thing I have to do is advertise the current digest of 5-year history, and with that, we put in, kind of what the tentative millage rate, what we're planning that to be. So that's the reason for the discussion tonight, even though we're not adopting the millage rate yet. So depending on what the tentative millage rate is, like the mayor said, we either have to do the property tax increase notice. That does require 3 public hearings. 2 can be on the same day, but then the rest of it has to be at least 5 days apart between one and the other 2. Or you can do all 3, different, but 2 of them have to be at least 5 days apart. The 3rd public hearing can be the same date as the meeting to adopt. So that can be incorporated with that regular meeting. We'd send a press release to the media and put it in the newspaper. We'd have to, of course, put it in both newspapers, and then put it on the website. If we adopt the rollback rate and there's no tax increase, then we still do the 5-year history notice. That has to be advertised at least a week prior to when we adopt. So it's a lot shorter process, but in the email I sent you guys, there was a difference. I mean, for years and years, Tallulah Falls was 6 mills. So that was, I think about 8,000, 83.45, I think, difference in tax revenue between the rollback rate and a 6. And then if we stay at where we are now, it was 4,000 something. But it would require the notice, even though we're not changing the millage rate. It probably only changes a few people's bills at all, just the ones that, were reassessed. So when they're figuring the rollback rate, only your reassessment goes into that calculation. So if you have like a new house built, you get the benefit of that growth. That doesn't count against you, but anything that's reassessed by the assessor office is what determines that rollback rate.
Yeah, it came in late, but if we keep the rate, that's still a tax increase, right?
So if we
It has to
keep
be
our rate
advertised.
now, it'll be a tax increase.
Right.
Anything above the rollback rate
Hmm.
is a tax increase. So it's kind of a decision, do you want to
Yeah, the
grow
negative,
your revenue to, as your digest increases, or, do you want to roll that back so that your revenue is basically, constant, always the same?
So our options are increase, stay the same, or roll back.
Yeah, well, an increase is an increase,
Yeah, staying the same.
or stay the, yeah.
Staying the same as an increase.
Well, the truth is that every time the assessor comes by and does his thing, you just got an increase, whether you knew it or
Yeah, I was gonna
not.
say, values will go up any,
Yeah, whether
Or
you knew it or
anyway.
not, you just got an increase, because he's, and I think their legislature says that they're required to do an assessment every 4 years.
Well, they have to do a countywide reevaluation every so many years. I think it's 3. The reason I say that is if you file a tax appeal, like let's say my house, you file an appeal, whatever the outcome of that appeal is, it will lock that value in for the year under appeal and the following 2. So most people will keep, if you do that sort of thing, you'll appeal it every 3rd year, right? But that means every 3rd year you're rolling those off. So they end up doing these countywide reevaluations. And then for purposes of tax assessor, you get into the sales ratio studies, the Department of Audits put out, where everything has to be assessed around 40% of 100% value.
Yeah.
There's only 40% of it, so the tax, so they do those studies every year. And so that's the purpose behind why, if you keep it the same millage, it is a tax increase, because the values go up, but also then when they do their studies, they've got to stay within like 38 and 42
Portion.
of it compared to what the actual values are. So if you keep it the same, it's an increase.
And also for us, because this is something we looked at before, we can only have 1 millage rate. So the rollback rate for Raven may be different than usually is than the rollback rate for Habersham. That without doing a tax increase, we have to go to the lowest rollback rate. So that rolls that back really even less to where we're getting less, could be getting less revenue than we did.
How much, give me an idea of what the rollback rate is versus, ours has been kind of hung in there at that 6% millage rate. So the rollback rate, how does it compare? to
Yeah,
that?
I mean, we're not talking about huge differences here, but, so compared to the 6 that it always was, we're at 5.848 now, because we've rolled it back 2 years in a row. The rollback rate, let's see, for Habersham was 5.741, and for Raven, 5.663. So we would have to roll all the way back to the 5.663.
which would be a negative $8,345, right? Overall, based on last year's.
Well, no, I mean, we still get the benefit of, new houses,
The
that kind of
increase in
stuff.
cost,
So,
okay.
so it's not,
So it may not be a decrease.
right necessarily,
Okay, that could possibly be an increase even.
so it covers
Depending on the
what we
taxes.
put.
And this year houses have all gone crazy up. I wonder if that's gonna show
Yeah,
up on the
that's not,
tax.
that's
Yeah.
not included in here, but for Habersham, there was 200 and, that's on 267,244 in reassessments. And for Raven, there was 320,007.
And forgive my ignorance, but the rollback that the 2 counties are doing is based off the new calculations they have on housing, or what is it based off of? Why'd they roll back?
So when the assessor's office does any reassessment, sometimes they'll do reassessments in a year, sometimes they come back and we don't have any reassessments for the year. But this year, they both have reassessments in those amounts that I just gave you. And so we have to put that in, and that reduces, or that rolls back our rate
Yeah, I got you. Why did they roll back? I mean, why did the millage rate roll back?
because of the reassessments.
And the
Because they're
reassessments
wording
are
reassessments.
The county didn't run, the counties, I don't know.
I know the counties are, someone's telling them, giving them.
Yeah,
those
the
millage
assessor's
rates.
office.
Assessor's office. State
No.
assessor's office.
No, this is county.
And it's not giving them the millage rate, the county assessor is going out and assessing the property's value, turning
Yeah.
that in, and if it's increased, then we have to look at our millage rate and whether we're gonna drop it down so that the dollars that we get
Oh, yeah, so it's like,
match what we got last year.
So they do the digest.
so you can never, the county city can never make money off the value of a house going up unless they advertise it or so. In other words, millage rate, and keep the rate.
We have to do the advertising and tell people that were raising their
Yeah,
taxes.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's
There's
a
a,
state statute.
in the Habersham paper this week, there's one from, I think Mount Airy is doing.
Yeah, I think Demarest was doing. There were one or two that advertised tax increases this year, but they're not changing the millage rate.
Yeah, I understand.
But regardless of which one we go with, whether it's rollback or increase or stay the same, we still have to do all these jump through the same hoops with the
So if we don't increase,
notifications and all that.
no, it's different. If we go with the rollback rate, the lowest rollback rate of 5.663, then that's not considered a tax increase. So we do the one notice, do the 5-year history. We do that at least a week ahead of when we're gonna adopt it, and that's the end of it. There's no public hearings, nothing else. The tax increase, we have to have 3 public hearings.
You have to advertise it.
But in theory, if we roll back all the assessors' assessments, we'll still break even on the amount of taxes we're bringing in, plus or minus.
Right, with the rollback rate.
Yeah, because the assessor, if the assessor's correct, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
so
it's
that,
gonna be
that
based off
just
their
keeps
numbers.
basically
And our budget's
revenue
already set
constant.
towards that
Yeah.
value.
Yeah.
So it's basically a tax increase if we want to add 8,000, you know, whatever it's gonna be,
Yeah.
roughly 8,000
But
bucks.
so it sounds like.
To go to 6.
Yeah.
We went back to
So
6.
5.6 is what we would go to if we did the rollback, and then all we gotta do is let them know a week in advance what we're doing, and end of story, right?
Right, and that's what, yeah, and it stays the same in the budget.
That's kind of what I'd be thinking that way, I believe. You know, 'cause
Just for interest, what are the
because
counties
it's gonna,
doing?
we're gonna, when they do, we're getting new houses built and assessments done, I don't think it's gonna change our money. We're gonna wind up with the same money, and we don't have to convince somebody it's a good idea to
Raise
give
tax.
them a tax increase, especially at a time like this.
Yeah.
People struggling enough.
Right.
We're not talking about a lot either.
Yeah, we're not talking about major differences either way. So that would be the one that I think makes the most sense. Stay with the rollback. We've done it 2 years already, right? The last 2 years, haven't we done
That's what we've
rollback?
done.
At least
We've done at least 2, I think. we
2 or 3.
Another one a couple of years ago, when Terry was still in office.
Psychologically, it sounds like a tax break. We're giving them a rollback, so I like the
Actually,
sound of it.
the last rollback I think Habersham County actually got their town taxes actually went down a little bit. They went with the rate.
Well, it's because you have to go with the lower, have
Right.
Habersham and Reagan, so. And
One of
whatever
the guys-
county's lower, the other one's gonna get a break.
Yeah, so, yeah. So Raven County, taxpayers.
If that's
Or
a
no,
decision that
Habersham would get the benefit of it.
Actually, a decrease in their,
Hmm.
how much they pay this year, so.
Well, and if you weren't reassessed, then you'll have a decrease regardless, even with the rollback rate. So the only way yours doesn't change is if you were one of those lucky few that got reassessed. The higher rate, then yours would be the
Be
same.
the same.
If you weren't reassessed, then yours will be lower.
If that's a decision that needs to be made tonight, and my vote would be to go with the rollback 5.6, the Raven County rate. Call it a day.
I don't think we're gonna adopt that tonight, we just need to know how to get Linda
A
that.
tentative, yeah, so I know how to advertise it.
So, but we probably do need a motion. Would you think we need a motion for that, or just
To authorize Linda to,
advertise at the? So let's get a motion for Linda to advertise the rollback rate.
Yeah, I'll make my,
Craig makes that motion, Tom seconds, all in favor, unanimous, all right. All right, so with that being said, we need to know, Linda's gonna need to know when to advertise for that meeting. September's meeting. First 2 weeks of September, I am not gonna be available to be here. Choices are, we don't have a whole lot right now to put on the agenda, we got a bunch of stuff done, taken care of tonight. If y'all wanna talk about the rollback and everything next month, Larry can run the meeting without me. I don't feel comfortable remoting in and trying to take care of running a meeting.
that's on September 9th.
Yeah, that'd be September, I guess it was September 9th, yeah. I can't remember what day it is.
Just confirm.
So we can, y'all can either go ahead and go forward with the scheduled meeting, we can postpone the meeting until I'm back, or cancel the meeting altogether.
I won't be here the week of the 16th or the 23rd.
I'm okay with keeping the meeting on the ninth. Mike, you're gonna be out on next city council meeting? Are we talking about city council meeting?
Yeah, city council meeting, I'm not gonna be available
On
those
the
first
9th.
2 weeks,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
The 9th or the 16th.
So you're not, okay, I was thinking the second, you were talking about the second and the ninth.
No, I won't be available the second either, but that wouldn't be at the council meeting night. So. And I'm not available anytime those weeks at all, so we can't reschedule to another day. So that's why I wanted.
So
to
I'm
bring this up.
available on the ninth.
If you guys are, then Larry, you'll have to take control. Feel like steering the ship.
Yeah, I'd be okay, doesn't matter, we just got routine stuff to review, right?
As far as I know, unless something drastic happens.
Nothing earth shaking. It's all right with me.
I'll be good with
I'm
9th.
unavailable on September 23rd, 4th, and 5th. I'm good the rest of the month.
Okay. Can we
So that
keep
means
Mike?
you'd have a quorum.
Yeah.
That's really what was
Yeah,
bringing that up, is you would need to have a quorum physically present.
I got you.
So,
So we're good for the ninth.
So we got 4, so.
yeah, that would be the four that we need. So that takes care of that. So we'll leave the meeting on the 9th. No changes, so we can go ahead and advertise for you guys to discuss that, make that decision next month. All right, so we'll move on to our ordinance to amend section 1501 of the zoning ordinances. Let me pull that up so I'm looking at it. There we go. This is the one talking about setback requirements and fences. So, and we're gonna come back to the, section about the fee schedule based on the next item on the agenda. So,
But weren't we gonna see what the zoning board actually, what their final?
no, this is on the
information
fence.
was?
This is on the fences. This wasn't, they approved this as it is. It's similar to it. So we did have an addition recommendation from a supporter saying that they might like to consider, you guys to consider whether or not to allow, when y'all say paths, I'm assuming something like a boardwalk.
Or just like a walkway, yeah. I mean,
Walkway of
even
some
just
sort.
Gravel.
Or a set of stairs that come up like a,
Yeah, a set of stairs I can
Well,
see, but like a gravel walkway
wouldn't be an issue. It's not
Wouldn't be an
considered a
issue
structure,
anyway.
right?
Right,
But yeah, stairs, I think you should,
there's just
yeah.
some steep terrain,
Yeah,
so if
you
you're
might
trying to
need
like
some
get to the
steps,
corner
I
of your
can see
property
that.
for any reason.
And like a concrete
Stairs.
walkway.
Concrete
Is
wall.
that considered a structure? Because under that ordinance, you're only allowing for fences and walls.
It should be.
It should, yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't think so.
We can,
I
we
just want to
can
make sure.
throw that language in there because, yeah, it's cement sidewalks kind of permanent. Or do we need to
Considered
figure
a-
out,
If it's
I don't
considered a
know.
structure, then you probably need to add that if you wanted to.
and we want to add.
Within
like,
that buffer
steps,
area, which
yeah.
I can understand, you'd want a walkway that goes to your house from the roadway.
Right,
Does that make any sense without having a?
right. Well, I mean, we kind of allow driveways
Yeah, I know.
to
So,
cross over the property line at a,
so,
so I don't know.
so structure, it's the definition of structures is what the
Yeah, I think,
problem is.
and we may need to address that.
Yeah.
It really
It seems to be
And
our
that's not
Achilles
something-
heel right there.
We can't do that tonight, and we may need to really consider, because it's so broad, it's created some other issues for us, that definition, so some problems, I see.
Well, right now, this one says building height placement requirements as it relates to natural screens and buffers, fences, driveways, concrete or pavement, paved driveways, sidewalks and walls. Is that something unheard of, not difficult to put in there?
Put
I
that
mean,
in there.
yeah,
And we can't cover every contingency.
no, you can't, but that would get your basic driveway taken care of,
Right,
and your basic walkway to your house taken care of.
Yeah. Because I'm thinking the idea, I'm having to think of what the intent of a 15-foot
The
setback.
4 foot, it's gonna mess up the driveway.
What's that?
If you add driveway in there, you're not gonna be 4 feet off. the
Oh, off the right of way?
Right-of-way.
Yeah.
So why is driveway structured?
Yeah, well, I guess we have to consider what the intent of the 15-foot setback is. And whether a driveway or walkway or stairs are violating that intent. You know, it's kind of a crazy.
Well, if we're gonna amend the ordinance, might as well take care of it.
Well, I think one thing on 15-foot setback, for example, and it depends on the lot and the situation, but for example, on a front line, let's just say a front property line, 15-foot back is pretty excessive. I mean, that's
Actually,
takes up a
it's
pretty
On the
good
roadway, it'd
chunk.
actually be 35 feet in a residential area.
Yeah.
From the
So-
center line?
so-
No, from your property line.
What?
Yeah.
So.
Right now, our setback is 35 feet in residential area.
That's awful
15
tight on
feet
a lot of
side.
lots.
But another thing now, and in my opinion, it seems
mean,
like 4
Encroaching
feet,
on a lot of lots. but I don't know.
4 feet, for example, from 4 feet from the right of way line may be all right, because that would probably be roughly 15 feet off the edge of the road. If you're talking about 4 feet off of the edge of the road, that's going.
I would understand a building not having a buffer against the right of way, but structures, I don't see the purpose of that. I know it's in our current ordinance.
Right.
I don't really get it. Because that's where you access your property, your
Right.
house.
So,
If that makes any
And
sense.
that's why I was looking at whether we could clean it up by just striking the serial list of screening, buffers, fences, and walls, and just changing it to structures, looping it back to the definition of that.
That would make sense.
It would,
That would make a lot of sense.
and I'm trying to think if that will, if there would be a structure that would not be.
I mean, people have carports right off the right of way, where they park in, and that's perfectly okay, it looks all right, but that would be falling under building, so what I'm trying to say is the roof covered.
If it had a roof on, yeah,
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, so the structure definition would be suitable in that situation, it sure seems like it would.
I think it could be. I think the intent of this originally was that we were trying to make it that you could put a fence on the property line and not have it be.
Oh, sure, and you may want a fence across the right of way too. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
and the same thing would be then if you're gonna do it for fences, do it for walls, do it for, if you have a
Right.
in cypress.
And if you need a wall or landscape wall next to the right of way to prevent, level your yard out, you ought to be able to do that if it's on your property. That's considered a structure, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so why is it, I like your idea of striking out, and just put structures and it loops back to the other, unless I'm missing something in that ordinance. It would make it simple.
And I don't know that you are, I think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
The problem is that this sort of just came up in our
I
ordinance. It's
understand,
kinda
now
like
we gotta
this,
study
so
it, yeah.
I suppose the thing that we could do is just,
It came up because of concern from the public, which I understand.
yeah,
So
and
that's why.
if it wasn't the direction that kind of we had talked about, and I was thinking when I drafted it, but if you want me to look at the possibility of revising it, just say structures, then we can do that.
If you could do that, move it back and make sure there's nothing there that's gonna be
You don't have to,
crazy.
yeah, you don't have to take action on tonight, held the public hearing, and so really all you do is I could look at making that one change and you just vote it next meeting.
and we vote contingent on that tonight,
Be done with it.
be done with it, because I know what brought this up to our attention is someone's wanting to go ahead and get a fence up and they're waiting on this. Okay, so out of courtesy for them, that they,
Is that the only issue that y'all see with it? I mean, so far, I mean, I hadn't looked it over just real.
Let me go back to,
just looking at back to structure, just making it
The
any
definition
structure.
of structure.
Yeah, that loops it back to the definition. Then if we want to amend the definition of structure later, that'll pick up, like,
It would pick
the only thing I can
up.
think of is if someone, like, I have a little tiny woodshed that I built that's really close to my property line on my driveway.
That's grandfathered in, but I got
Yeah,
you.
so, but that's got a roof, so it's a building.
Right, that's not a
It's not a
structure.
structure.
Yeah.
So I can't, I'm racking my brain trying to think of any structure that would be
I think
a
we're over,
nuisance.
we're over.
That won't work. And here, the reason I don't think that'll work is that in 1501, it says, except as otherwise specifically provided, no structure shall be erected between the lot line and the pertinent setback districts. And no structure will be erected which exceeds the height. So we use structure there. Then you come down here and we've said, except for screenings, fences and walls, those aren't subject to the setback lines. If we change all of that to say structure, then you basically just obliterated all of your setback lines as worded above in the other ordinance.
Because it's related to structures.
So I agree with you.
Yeah, what's the intent of that terminology to mean buildings?
I think it, I think it 100% was.
And everybody's just using the term structure.
But we've got two distinct,
I understand, you gotta change another
and,
one.
and long-term, I would recommend that we get all of that, straightened out. I think it'll cause you more problems than it's good, but what I would probably recommend is just adding in, let's do something.
What if we just add in what he's saying?
That's what I'm saying, let's do something tonight, because it sounds like we've got folks.
Yeah, to allow the person to build their.
So,
fence.
so whether y'all want to go with this, I'd even be fine, if y'all are good with saying, walkways.
Yeah.
And driveways, let's add that in.
Yeah.
If we need to amend it later as part of an overall thing, then let's do that.
Okay, so walkways and common driveways and.
Stairs, steps, stairs, something of that effect.
So we want to do something tonight to allow y'all to be able to move on and then give you an opportunity, Warren, to tweak that thing and.
We'll have to go change other
whatever manner,
ordinances,
and then-
another manner.
Yeah, and what is it, walkways? Sidewalks and stairs?
Stairs. Steps, something. So I can't imagine someone building a staircase and just
Now-
35
now-
feet above their property line.
Do we need to put
We just need
any
a couple of steps.
wording as far as fencing goes in there that was?
Fencing's already in there.
It's already
Yeah.
there.
Considered structure.
Yeah, no,
Screening
there's a
and
difference
screening
between
buffers,
those.
fencing.
I was just trying to cross it all off, as we could, as fast as we can.
Too,
Okay.
down the road. I'm not gonna like put a sidewalk in right around the road.
I got you.
I think we do this when we probably start figuring out some of the other. I don't think anything's gonna happen between now and then, honestly.
No, I mean, we're talking about, this is, in planning and zoning looking for projects.
Yeah.
I got a great.
We got a couple.
Yeah, actually, there's several more on the list, because there are quite a few other things. We still haven't done signs that we've tasked them with, and we haven't finished the land disturbing stuff that we tasked them with. They picked up tree on their own and ran with that, but then we brought them these, and there's plenty more in there that need to be addressed and looked at.
Yeah, so what changes are we gonna make? It's gonna say natural screenings and buffers, fences, walls,
Walkways and stairs.
sidewalks and stairs.
Yeah, well, walkways are
I think walkway, sidewalk
walkway.
kind of fit. They should be about the same.
Yeah, they are. All right, so just, y'all tell me, I mean, I agree with that, but I just wanna make sure I got it written down. Right, unless Linda's gonna make changes.
Yes, I say yes.
I say it.
I can say yes.
So, walkways, stairs. We're not gonna do driveways, right? And can we agree driveways are exempt from
Yeah.
setbacks?
I think if you were to require somebody to put their driveway 4 feet off the right of way, you're gonna
Might be
end up with a lot
problematic.
more legal issues.
I think that's gonna have to be common sense.
Yeah, I agree.
It's too easy.
There is some of that of this. So, all right, walkways. Walkways and stairs. Do we even need stairs?
Yeah, there's a walkway.
Walkway with.
Probably gonna fall into some other trap in the future with that.
Let's kick it down the road.
There's no, I don't see it, but
Okay.
yeah, I think steps fall under a walkway.
Yeah.
Well, I mean.
But we can
especially if
clarify.
they're part of the walkway.
We can clarify and make sure that it's, because of other language, sometimes we do need to specify.
Well, and so, I mean, I guess we really need to get to tonight is having a fence. And then, you know, we've had
You
public.
can do
input.
walkway and steps,
Yeah.
Yeah.
probably better than stairs, because then you can get mechanical, wooden, all kinds of crazy.
Okay, walkways and steps. And we'll, and we're starting, I mean, sidewalks, fall under walkways.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we need to make a motion on
Yeah, the motion would be to adopt the ordinance pending these changes. These additions.
yeah, motion to approve the
that? So I'll
ordinance.
make a motion to approve the ordinance change pending those,
Yes, subject to
subject to.
the amendments we talked about.
Okay, so motion.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Unanimous? Approval of the fence.
And I think
Walkways.
I think the instructions were to get in.
Hard to figure it out. All right,
All right, so now on to
It's done now. I don't have to worry.
204.
2004. This is about where do we want to cut off the requirement for a building permit? I think we're pretty much, when we left off that discussion, we we're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 square feet. And if that sounds reasonable, then we can adopt this ordinance.
We always
We
change.
can always change it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 200 sounds good to me.
So get a motion to,
Yeah.
to adopt the ordinance
Second.
with the change to, of square footage to 200. Motion made, seconded by Tom, and unanimous, or all in favor?
Yeah.
Unanimous, sorry. I don't wanna Do one of those
Assume
forces.
very
I don't want to force.
Psychological work.
Okay, now let's roll back one more step here, so
Right, to the feet,
to the fees.
yes.
So our fee schedule,
So you guys have studied the fees, correct? Like we talked, y'all are good on the fee schedule. So we just gotta change the language to 200 square feet, or do we keep it for that fee schedule?
well, we're not gonna be, if we're not requiring a permit
No.
I
until
know.
200 square feet, then we need to change. the
Yeah, you need to
language.
change it to whatever.
Yeah, we changed language in part 8.2 to be up to 200 square feet, and then we'd have to change the,
So this would be,
ex-
well, it's a gradated scale, right? So
Right.
it was anything over 300 is 175, anything between 64 and 300 is 30, anything under 64 doesn't need one. We've now bumped that up to where anything under 200 doesn't need one. So then the question is, are you gonna charge $30 for a structure that's between 200 and 300? And
or,
I'm fine with it.
or do we want to increase that to something else, but keeping in mind that the wording is that this is for secondary structures.
Yeah.
The $30 as opposed to a primary use structure,
So.
building. I need to learn a new word, building.
The same structure.
Yeah, I need to stop saying it. So the building that is temporary in nature or not permanent in nature, like a storage shed, a garden shed, something like that. Anything under, do y'all want to change that difference between the 200 and 300, or you want to go bigger, 200 to 500? I mean, you are starting to get into the tiny home sizes
at 500.
at 500. So
Fine with keeping that
just
300.
keep it at 3, so we go 200 to 300, narrow window, we can change that. If we see something at any time that's on a zoning ordinance, so then go through the same procedure. It's.
Yeah, if I decide to block in my shed and put it down permanent, it would fall under 175, even though if it's under 300 square feet.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you're structurally changing.
I know.
Yeah, so,
Well, and two, you know, an outbuilding doesn't typically get completely finished. It's roughed in,
Yeah.
it's rough on the inside. It's not like a livable structure where you got insulation, plumbing and all that.
right.
So fee wise, you know, it's kind of hard to hit somebody too
It's-
heavy
Yeah,
for, you know, something we're gonna put the lawnmower in.
yeah,
That's right.
So, you know,
Or-
whatever y'all think.
or more firewood.
Yeah, or firewood, you know, it's
Right.
great. You know, so you, common sense and reasonable.
Look at you two. All right,
They're non-existent nowadays.
all right,
You can have
then,
one principal building per lot.
you can still only have one principal building.
So it's still an accessory, would still be
Still
an
have an
accessory.
accessory.
building.
Yeah. We have tons. So that's something else we'll need to address, is like how many accessory buildings are gonna be allowed per, per lot at some point. That's not for discussion tonight. Sure. All right, so Tom wants to make the motion, I guess, that we adopt
Yes.
this ordinance, subject to that amendment.
So where are we on the fees now again? Run it down for me.
There'll be no fee for any building under 200 square feet, thank you, under 200 square feet. There'll be a $30 fee, building permit fee for accessory buildings over 200 and under 300 square feet. Anything else is gonna be the $175 fee,
Which is where it is.
which is where it is right now, which is where it's been.
Sounds good.
Okay, motion to adopt based on those amendments.
Motion to adopt based on those amendments.
All right, seconded Joey. All in favor? Unanimous. Real quick on mayor's comments. There's gonna be some activity next week on Wednesday where Main Street may be shut down for a little while. So just be aware Wednesday morning, I think from roughly 7 till noon, I think. Of course, we need to talk about the bus getting through first. But outside of that, just be aware, we'll send a note, we'll probably send a notice out as well. For those of y'all that might use Main Street as a main thoroughfare, just turn different direction. And are there any public comments?
Shut down for what reason? I mean,
Yeah, no, tell us why.
Can we tell them why?
Filming.
Film,
Uh,
Netflix is doing that.
Who's the extra?
Huh?
Are you gonna be an extra?
I'm not gonna be in town.
Okay,
So
well,
what's
back
part
up,
two?
back up to, then
I'm
if we're
gone.
done, if we're done with that, then on the water, I wanted to find out where we are on the installation of the SCADA system.
I'm meeting with Josh tomorrow morning. We're gonna be talking about it. We've been trying to schedule this for a couple of months now, but there've been emergencies on our water system. There've been some other things happening and those guys have been busy. So, but I've got a meeting with them tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. And we're gonna talk about the logistics of getting those things put in. So it'll be happening soon.
Okay, I'd like to get that,
Yeah.
we got it,
Me
it's on
too.
the shelf and then
Yeah.
save.
Me too. Save me driving up
aggravation,
there every day.
Save aggravation and save some water running out on the ground and that sort of thing, so.
So.
and-
And Mike is still working diligently. Due to the nature of the surge protection for that building, he does not want to have to go back and fix it. He wants to try to get it right the first time, so he's really pushing for as many bids from people he feels is qualified. He's met with a couple of people that he, after he met with them, he's like, I don't think that guy really knows what we're looking for.
You talking about for an installer on the SCADA?
No, for the lightning protection on that pump house.
Oh.
Yeah, the installation of the SCADA
Yeah.
is simple. It's something we're gonna do.
Yeah.
It's just we gotta coordinate because they have to be sterilized before we can drop parts of it down into the water. We don't want, it may have oils on it or something like that.
This is on that light,
Put on
finding
the
somebody
lightning.
qualified for the lightning.
Right.
restoration stuff.
Yeah, so he's really pushing. He couldn't be here tonight. He was gonna give that report tonight. He had an emergency come up and he wasn't able to attend the meeting for that, so. But he is still pushing on that. That's still a high priority on his list. It's just, just the nature of it's kind of pushing it into a situation where you really want to try to get it as close to right the first time as you can.
And we got the pump in for the tank.
That's right. Yeah, the stainless steel pump that y'all approved several months ago. So now we can start working on scheduling and cleaning out of the big tank. Oh, good. So, and that road's fine. It's been holding up really well through the storms. We do have a storm coming in over the weekend, hitting Florida over the weekend. Should be up here. I think they're expecting Tuesday, Monday,
Heavy
Tuesday.
rain.
Some heavy rains. We are gonna be on the eastern side of that, which is where more of the wind and rain comes from, be dragging it out of the Atlantic. So just
storm, it won't be too bad, that's how it gets here.
We hope, but
I'm
still,
vacationing about.
That's the one that come out of the Gulf, they flood this place
They do.
when they shoot around, pour it up to the Gulf.
may not get too much rain, but we'll get a lot of water.
It's gonna be 150 miles east to where it's supposed to roll in.
So it's not gonna go, come around the
By time
Gulf.
it rolls in.
Oh, okay.
Orange Beach,
Yeah.
Orange Beach, Gulf Shores.
It's
The other side, okay.
supposed to come ashore in Apalachicola, somewhere thereabouts.
So those are actually, Larry, those are gonna be part of my mayor's comments, so we're trucking along.
Oh, okay, I just, and Mike's reports in here, Mike Sims, a little brief, little summary, if y'all need to see it. It should be in your stuff there, Mike Sims, little summary. And then I was gonna see if, on the police report here, if Tanya had anything. I don't know how she got put to the bottom of the list, but
I don't know, and she moved me first because I'd love to be at home.
I can't answer that one.
I don't have anything. Oh, I do, we did get the safety grant approved. A lot of items weren't approved on it, but the other weren't.
That's in your packet too, a copy of the
The
award.
letter for safety grant is in there. That was part of the consent agenda.
It was, I'm sorry, Tony, I missed that. You had, what was it that was approved?
There's
Safety-
some
safety
items that
grant?
were approved, unfortunately, like the chair and stuff the fire department requested, it wasn't approved.
Okay, that was just on that safety grant thing you were shooting for?
Yeah.
So you got, some did and some didn't, so was there an amount attached to it? Or-
Yeah, we got, close to 6,000.
That's all I got, I guess.
All right, any public comment? Anybody online? Rob, Terry?
I have a question. This is Terry, going back to the burn permit request. My understanding is that's no longer being covered by DNR, and the council and mayor are going to re-review that. Request as a citizen, we live in a very dangerous fire zone area that our fire equipment cannot put out house fires. So I would think the mayor had referenced the thought of the fire department issuing these permits. I would like to second that idea. I think that's a good idea. We need some local control. Fire starts here. We're out of luck, guys. Thank you for your consideration.
We did not do away with the ban on burning above 2,000 feet. That's still in place. So,
Understood. Whenever I speak as the town as a whole. Thank you.
right, any other public comment? All right, we really do need to go into executive session for potential litigation, but it shouldn't take long. So I'd like to get a motion to go into executive session for potential litigation. Joey makes that motion. Get a second. Tom seconds. All in favor? Unanimous. All right, so we'll close out. Do this.